The regular school board meeting for February 24th, 2022 is now in session. Ms. Delgado, will you please take roll?
Mr. Cano?
Present.
Mr. Castillo?
Present.
Ms. Flores? Ms. Murillo?
Present.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Present.
Sir President, we have established quorum.
Thank you. Mr. Superintendent?
Thank you, Mr. President. Board members, welcome. Our first item tonight is I'd like to introduce Ms. Savaggio, our principal here at Mesquite Elementary.
Good evening, school board members, Superintendent Dempsey, guests. Welcome to Rain Country. We're very happy to have you here. We've been having virtual meetings, so it is my pleasure to have an actual in-person meeting, so welcome aboard. At this point in time, I would like to introduce our student council officers, Ariana Lujan, President, Celine Talamantes, Secretary, Mikey Chavez, Treasurer, to lead us in the pledges. Please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico as the symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures.
Thank you. You may be seated. At this time, I would like to introduce a lady who I've known for a long time. She started here at Mesquite Elementary School as one of our parents. She was very active. Soon she decided she would like to be a substitute teacher for us, and she was awesome. When the time came to hire a kinder IA, she blew the committee away and was hired. And then we had an opening for library IA, and she applied for that, and she's doing the same tremendous job there. In addition, she is the spirit of our school. She has led our cheerleaders for the last 2 years. She led them virtually through the pandemic. They would practice virtually, and I am very proud of her. She's a little nervous, but it is worth the wait, and it is worth her getting up and singing her own praises. Please help me welcome our cheerleader sponsor, our library IA, and the spirit of Mesquite Elementary School, Ms. Lorena Delgado Hernandez.
Good evening, board members, President Flores, and Superintendent Dempsey. It has been an honor for me to be able to be the cheerleading sponsor here at Mesquite. These girls have been working extremely hard even through the pandemic. They have been so dedicated that they continue practicing virtually. This is a true definition of dedication. And speaking of dedication, I would like to thank all the parents for their support. Please help me welcome the Rumtastics. I need to connect the Bluetooth.
We got spirit, yes we do. We got spirit, how about you? We got spirit, yes we do. We got spirit, how about you? We got spirit, yes we do. We got spirit, how about you? We got spirit, yes we do. We got spirit, how about you?
professional. You guys are doing awesome.
Board members, Superintendent Dempsey, that concludes our program.
Thank you, Ms. Savaggio. Our first item on our agenda tonight is a recognition, and Mr. Lotta, Representative Lotta's, we're pleased to have him with us tonight, and this is from the New Mexico Legislature Acknowledgement of Mesquite Elementary Blue Ribbons recognition, and our principal here, Ms. Savaggio. And so, Mr. Lotta, if you'll come up and present those. So, Ms. Savaggio, you have to stand there by him again, and we want to recognize all your hard work.
Good afternoon, Mr. Superintendent, members of the board, Madam President. It's my honor today to present two certificates from the New Mexico House of Representatives for Mesquite Elementary and for Ms. Savaggio. I'll begin with the recognition for Mesquite Elementary. Mesquite Elementary School in the Gadsden Independent School District was one of 3 New Mexico schools honored in 2021 by the National Blue Ribbon Schools Program, which recognizes outstanding schools throughout the nation. I believe that by seeing the presentation that we saw from the children, they have a lot of pride in the school. And this is something that reflects not only the school, but it also reflects the community. And I also would like to mention that I appreciate seeing the young man here participating in this as well. This is something that's very important, and I want to thank Ms. Savaggio for the diversity in the group. Thank you for that. Secondly, I'd like to recognize Ms. Savaggio. I remember when Ms. Savaggio came to the district, she and I worked very closely as she transitioned into the principalship here at Mesquite. There was ups, there was downs. We worked on some pretty difficult issues. We did. And we overcame, and we grew, and we learned. And Ms. Savaggio set forth the vision that she had for Mesquite Elementary. On behalf of the House of Representatives of the State of New Mexico, I would like to present this certificate to Ms. Savaggio. At Mesquite Elementary School, Ms. Savaggio received the Terrell H. Bell Award for Outstanding School Leadership for 2021, one of 8 school leaders nationally to receive the prestigious Educational Leadership Award from the United States Department of Education. And it is my distinct honor as representative and as a member of the community to thank you for all your hard work and your dedication to our children. Thank you, Ms. Savaggio.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Lara, and congratulations, Ms. Savaggio. We really appreciate all your hard work. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, board members, Superintendent Dempsey, Mr. Lara, and mainly, you can see the community behind me. This was not a sole effort. It was parents, it was students, it was teachers, it was everyone. So these awards belong to the entire Mesquite community. Thank you all very much for your support. Thank you.
Our next item is a student recognition. This is our BPA state competition results, and I believe Ms. Lopez may be presenting online. Let's see if we can pull this off. Ms. Lopez is with us, but our students are online. Yes, thank you.
So good evening, board members, Superintendent Dempsey. My name is Vicki Lopez. I'm the principal at Chaparral High School. And tonight I'm honored to present to you a group of students and staff that have gone to the New Mexico State BPA, Business Professionals of America competition. I think this is now our 13th season in a row. And we've brought back some first and second place winners. So I think joining us tonight online is our teacher, Sarah Duran Campbell, who will be introducing the students.
I see somebody. She may have froze. She may have come back. She may have froze.
She's not there? Okay, all right, which is okay because we always have a plan B when it comes to technology. Okay, so I don't know if Mr. Snowdy is able to put the slides up for me. We did send 5 kids to our state competition. And our first place podcast production team, yes, no? Yes, I sent them, sorry. Sorry.
Keep her online. You see what internet.
Okay, Ms. Campbell apparently is with us, so Ms. Campbell, can you go ahead and introduce the students? That's all right. I'll go ahead and move forward with it. We have 5 kids that did a fantastic job. First place in podcast production was Gideon Potts, Kayla Rojas, and Jose Alanis. So they automatically earned a way into the national competition in Dallas, Texas. Also in first place, digital communications and design concept, Miss Aaliyah Hernandez. And then finishing second place, our video production team of Eileen Sandoval and Aaliyah Hernandez. They also, all 5 students have earned their place to go to Dallas, Texas in May and will represent Chaparral High School and GISD at the national competition. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Ms. Lopez. Our next presenter is Ms. De La Garza from Alta Vista Early College High School.
Good afternoon, Madam President Flores, board members, Superintendent Dempsey.
This year, Alta Vista Early College High School offered our first CTE Media Communications program. As the first year, Mrs. Candace Brinegar and her students have been involved in developing podcasts, conducting interviews, and creating news broadcasts, all while receiving hands-on instruction and training with today's industry, standard technology, and practices. As part of the requirements for the CTE Media Communications program, our students recently competed in the Business Professional of America State Leadership Conference in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I am very proud of our students' academic progress and competition results. At this time, I would like to proudly introduce their advisor, Mrs. Candace Brinegar, so that she may introduce her 5 BPA students who are now preparing to travel to the BPA 2022 National Leadership Conference in Dallas, Texas.
Thank you, Mrs. De La Garza, and thank you for having us here tonight. I'm so proud of these students. What a way to start our first year in CTE and competing. The first 2 girls I would like to recognize were part of a podcast production team that placed 3rd, but they actually earned their ticket to nationals in financial math and analysis concepts. So placing 5th was Alejandra Cenaceros, if you'll come up. Placing 4th was Aaliyah Dominguez. We had a student who competed in prepared speech. Leslie Gonzalez placed 3rd. Ricardo Ramirez placed 1st in digital media production, and part of his prize was a $500 scholarship. And also earning a 1st place and a $500 scholarship in graphic design promotion was Elias Galvan. Thank you. And thanks to my students for being on this journey with me. They've been incredible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lopez and Ms. De La Garza. We appreciate that, and congratulations to those students. The next item is Save the Kids Network, and Ms. Burciaga is going to help me with this item.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Mr. Superintendent. A few months ago, we came and presented to you a new partnership and MOU with Save the Children Action Network. Today, we'd like to share our latest collaboration and a few of our upcoming endeavors with you. Here to elaborate on this is Ms. Marisol Diaz from Save the Children.
Good evening, Madam President, board members, and superintendent. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you today. We really appreciate it. As you know from our previous presentation, Save the Children is a global organization, usually first in and first out in emergency and crisis situations across the world. So it is on a somber day today, as a member of the global community, with a heavy heart that I stand before you, thinking of the fear and anguish that the children of the Ukraine are facing at this very moment. I am grateful, though, to be here to deliver some very great news to you about our partnership. During the short legislative session, there were some key pieces of legislation poised to directly affect the children of New Mexico, and of course, southern New Mexico. In an effort to uplift the voices of parents, educators, grandparents, and of course the children, SCAN leveraged and mobilized its partners to collect close to 1,100 pre-made postcards and homemade Valentine's Day cards in Doña Ana County alone, which we sent to senators at the legislature, asking them to continue to invest in kids, to support early childhood education budget initiatives, to support the Food, Farm, and Hunger Initiative, and to continue to be their voice. Children and parents of Gadsden Independent made their collective voice known and gave their senators a heart attack through almost 300 Valentine's cards sent to them to represent the needs of the children of this community. As you know, these pieces of legislation were incredibly successful this year, but there is much more that needs to be done. In the first few months of our partnership, we have together started to build awareness with our elected representatives that parents and other advocates will continue to expect that they put our children, our future, first. In the next few months, we will be working closely with our GISD liaisons to engage and educate parents on the Children's Nutrition Reauthorization Act, which is a federal initiative which will affect programs like the WIC modernization and school meals programs, as well as the upcoming constitutional amendment to further fund early childhood education. However, our next project will be to ask local incorporated municipalities to acknowledge the significant role that children play in our society. We will request an observance of the cultural significance of Dia de los Niños through proclamation, dedicating April 30th, 2022, as Day of Acknowledgement, Importance, and Cultural Awareness of the children in our communities and the role that they play in our current and future lives. I look forward to working with GISD to solidify this day of cultural heritage and acknowledgement of the importance of our children's lives. We look forward to continuing to build on the work of many advocates and to continue finding meaningful ways to elevate children, their parents, and their collective voice. Thank you so much for the time and the partnership. We appreciate you and all of the children in our community.
Thank you. Our next item, Madam President and board members, our next item is our legislative update. This is something that I'll try to provide a brief summary. Now, I want everybody to keep in mind that the legislative session has obviously ended, and that legislation is now on our governor's desk, and she has about a 20-day window to sign that, and it would be enacted. So the major, I'm going to probably talk about two significant pieces that are a part of that. And most of this is in House Bill 2, but some are in others. But so I want you to think of these in terms of buckets. Bucket 1 is what I'm going to call a retention stipend. And this is an amount for all staff that would be provided this year. The part we don't quite understand yet is the calculation of it and the amount. So that's something that I have a meeting Monday with the secretary. Ms. Martinez and I will join him in Tier C and try to get some details. But that would be a compensation, one-time check rolled out this year as a retention stipend. Bucket 2 includes, this is really the meat of House Bill 2, minimum salaries for teachers, level 1 at $50,000, level 2 at $60,000, level 3 at $70,000, and a $15 per hour minimum wage for hourly employees. And that's the big meat of House Bill 2. And we appreciate all the work and effort that it took to get these there, and definitely support them. The reason why we're a little cautious right now is we want to make sure, as people interpret the language, we calculate it correctly. And so as staff has asked me, what's this going to look like? What's my check going to look like? I'm very cautious to give them some answers right now because I don't have those details yet. The third bucket is a little bit unique. It's available for everyone in the state, but it is tied to what's called the Extended Learning Time Program, and I'm going to use a new term called K-12 plus. So as many of you already know, we are already a participant in extended learning time. So that's an additional 10 days that was added to our calendar several years ago, and we'll be compensated for that. And in fact, the compensation is more than it has been in the past. So ultimately, what I believe is going to happen with our staff is they're going to have a base contract and then an addendum that gives them additional dollars for that extended learning time. And when I mention K-12 plus, many of you know that we've participated for years and years in K-5 plus. Some of the rules associated made it a little difficult at times to meet everything, and last summer we chose to do our own summer program. Our family still got a summer program, but we couldn't meet all the rules, so we funded it ourselves. And that's our plan right now. However, the state has come up with this idea around K-12 plus. And not all the rules have been written to that. And I'm really excited about the opportunity to help New Mexico Public Education Department take a look at what we're doing, and hopefully we can be a huge influence in how those rules are written. So I'm very excited about it, and I assure you that we already have a summer program well planned, and it does involve pre-K-12, in fact. So our goal is to provide every student and every family an option here in the summer to participate if they choose. And that would be the K-12 plus would be on a voluntary basis. Now, two reminders, and I already mentioned these, is governor still needs to sign this, and then New Mexico Public Education Department needs to provide us very detailed guidance on how to make these calculations, okay? Our next item is a COVID update. And so I think we're all aware that the mask requirement was changed and left to a local decision. Administratively, what we decided to leave that to an individual choice. And so parents, students, employees can all choose whether they have a mask on or off indoors. And we support that. Now, here's a reminder, though, and this has been a little bit of a struggle. All other COVID-safe practices remain in place. And so it was a little tempting, I think, for some of us to just say, oh, it's over. But we don't know that for sure. Now, as of today, there were 7 confirmed positive cases in the district. Okay, so they're significantly down, but that does not, this is a virus, and that does not mean it's gone. And so we want to be very cautious and thoughtful as we proceed forward. The hope is every week or so we can start removing more and more of those layers of protections to where we get back to something that feels very normal. I do anticipate the state releasing a new toolkit, which is our guiding document behind those COVID-safe practices. So just a reminder, daily health screenings remain a requirement, social distancing to the greatest extent possible, and contact tracing remain a responsibility of the district, and we continue to do those things. Okay? Finally, our next item is our student representative, and I want to introduce Ms. Hernandez, who is a freshman at Alta Vista Early College High School.
Good evening, Madam Board President Flores, School Board members, Superintendent Dempsey, and guests. My name is Brianna Hernandez, and I am a freshman at Alta Vista Early College High School. First of all, we had 74 8th grade applicants who applied to Alta Vista Early College High School. So far, we have accepted 54 students for the 2022-2023 school year. We have sent out the acceptance letters. 23 were accepted from Chaparral Middle School, 21 were accepted from Gadsden Middle School, and 10 were accepted from Santa Teresa Middle School. The team is still reviewing applications. The application process is still open through March 18th. We are excited for our incoming freshman students to join our school community. Our school teams and organizations have been doing great this year. Esports is in full swing this semester. They have 9 players, and their 4th game was on Tuesday, February 22nd. All students participating are sophomores, so we're hoping to recruit more players from all grade levels. On November 20th, our chess club received the 3rd place team award at Park Hills Invitational, where Bianca Navarrete and Dulce Subia participated. They are looking forward to playing at Eastwood Knolls International School on March 26th in El Paso, Texas. We want to recognize our Teacher of the Year, Ms. Candice Brinegar. She is an excellent English and CTE Media Communications teacher, and we are lucky to have her as part of the Mighty Owl staff. Last week, we had ICAP meetings, which were student-led, and we had the opportunity to speak to our parents and present the next step plan and Xelo goals for our future. Juniors will be participating in the UNM Mentoring Institute, which partnered with 21st Century Solutions to create a course called A+ Soft Skills System. This course teaches soft skills such as personal skills, employability skills, and workplace communication skills to our juniors and will continue into their senior year. The juniors will receive a certificate of completion when they complete each course from the UNM Mentoring Institute. The students can use this to show employers, or it can be attached to a college application. In preparation of graduation, seniors have already picked up their caps and gowns from Jostens. They will be having their graduation pictures taken tomorrow. We have 4 seniors that qualified for the bilingual seal and are working on their presentations. In addition, NMSU advisors also visited with seniors during their senior seminar classes to discuss the next steps in their application for NMSU. They will be attending orientation on May 12th. They will be allowed to register first as current DACC students. The advisors also presented scholarships Alta Vista seniors received from NMSU. We anticipate even more scholarships to be awarded this semester. In closing, it has been my pleasure to have shared about my school, Alta Vista Early College High School. And as always, we thank the school board, our superintendent, and the Gadsden community for your continued support. As a student of Alta Vista Early College High School, I want to express my gratitude and appreciation for this excellent opportunity as I begin my journey here. I look forward to the college experience that I will begin in the fall as a sophomore and my future field of study in medicine. Thank you once again for your continued support.
Okay, we're at board member report. Ms. Rodriguez, would you like to get us started?
First of all, thank you, Ms. Avaggio, for the hospitality. And once again, congratulations to all the Mesquite community. Like Ms. Avaggio said, this is a team effort, right? Everyone, all parents, students, everyone had something to do with this accomplishment. So congratulations to everyone. Well, I am very happy that the mask mandate has been relaxed. And I think that, you know, having that choice is very important, and something that we need to take into consideration is that no questions should really be asked, right? No one should be asking, why are you still wearing a mask? Much less, why are you not wearing a mask? So it is a choice, and that's great that everyone has the opportunity to make the decision. Of course, following protocols, procedures and everything that is still in place. It is very important because it is a virus, as Mr. Dempsey mentioned, and we don't know where this is heading, but let's take care of each other. I want to mention that I attended the student leadership, and these students, wow, it's amazing what they do. They ask questions. They're very interested in what is happening within our district. So like them, I encourage the parents to please participate. It is very, very important for us to know what is happening and what things can be modified or changed or made better. And so in order to do that, we all need to work in a partnership, and by doing that, we can participate during the coffee with the principal, coffee with the superintendent. As for the staff, there's the morning message? Monday morning message. And so that is important, send out your questions, and that's how we're all going to be informed again of what is going and what is happening around our district. And thank you, Ms. Marisol Diaz from SCAN. It is very important, right, that we advocate for our children, and this organization, I know, is working hard in doing that, and it's interesting and neat to hear that 300 cards were sent from our kids and parents from the district. So again, in order to make a change, we need to be advocates. So please participate, whether you're a parent, a staff member, and you have a question, please ask those questions and learn what the procedures or protocols or what needs to be followed, remembering always there's a chain of command that needs to be followed. So thank you for that, that I know that there's a lot of participation, and I think that concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. Ms. Flores, would you like to provide?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to those that are watching on stream. Thank you so much. And I want to thank, again, for your hospitality, Ms. Avajo, Mr. Reyes, the administration, the teachers that helped over there in the library. It was delicious. Thank you so much. And thank you because I came in late. I wanted to excuse myself because I was on a mandatory meeting for work. Thank you for letting me use your office. I was tempted to ring that bell, but I didn't. I controlled myself. But beautiful bell, well-deserved, Blue Ribbon School. Let me see. Let me see. Oh, I see somebody in the crowd. I'm going to embarrass you, Marisela and Marco. Thank you for coming. She's class of 1994. Thank you. I didn't know your children came to the school, but hi. Recognize some of you in the audience. I'd like to, as you know, last week the legislative session did end, and I want to take the moment to thank State Rep Ray Lara this evening. He's here joining us. Raise your hand, Mr. Ray. Thank you for all your hard work. And I also want to thank Doreen Gallegos, who's another state rep, my own rep, Willie Madrid, and our senator, state senator, Mr. Cervantes. Thank you for all the work that you do. And I know that you and Mr. Madrid are part of the education committee, so thank you for all you do for our district and all the children of New Mexico. I'd also like to wish good luck to all our spring sport athletes, which include tennis, softball, track, baseball, and golf, and of course, esports. So good luck to all of those sports. Let me see. And I love what you said, ma'am. I forgot your name, but our prayers are with the children, not only with the children, but all the families being affected in Ukraine. Godspeed be with them. And then I did read an email, I don't know if she's here tonight, Nurse Cregan. Thank you for all your hard work and collaboration with Mr. Dempsey and whoever else was part of this in establishing those PMG testing sites. Thank you so much, I appreciate that. And then also I did want to take the time, a year ago, there was a colleague, very good colleague and friend, and Mr. Dempsey sometimes wears this little, what do you call it, a lanyard, and her name was Karen Trujillo. She was my superintendent where I work, and so tomorrow is the anniversary of her untimely death. So Karen, thank you. I know you're up in heaven rejoicing with our God, and so it was hard because it was a year ago when it happened. We were still Zooming. I love you. Thank you for all you did, because she was also a friend and a colleague to the community of Gadsden. Some of you might not know, she worked with MC Squared and also with the Gadsden Math Initiative under our previous superintendent. So we love you, Karen. And that concludes my what is this? my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Flores. Mr. Castillo.
Thank you. Ditto on Ms. Salvaggio, thank you for your hospitality. Mesquite, congratulations on your well-deserved award. And it shows by the cheerleading team, their sponsor was a little frazzled, but they weren't. I mean, they took over. You could see that little girl, I know how to do this. Yes. And it shows, and it's a reflection on the parents, on the teachers, and the administration. So Mesquite, congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Castillo. Mr. Cano.
I'm going to ditto everything that my colleagues up here said. Thank you for this hospitality. Congratulations for your presidential nomination for Mesquite. And I also want to thank all the parents for their support for the school and for the district. Congratulations. I also want to touch a little bit on this relax that we're having now with our mask mandates. I did take the liberty of spying on some schools, okay? Out far away, not close to the schools, but far away. And I still saw most of the students still wearing their mask, and parents going into the districts, into the school districts, and still wearing their masks. You know, kudos to all those parents and administrators down in the South that everything is still going, you know, helping us out and staying safe for all our kids. I think that's all I got to say. I got to leave some for Miss Arlene here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cano. Ms. Morillo.
Yes, good evening. Thank you so much for the invitation. In addition, I just want to add, I had to do a little bit of homework. I have never met you before, and I think you have done an amazing job with this school. But I did wanted to mention that you are also one of the 8 principals receiving the Terrell Bell Award, which is an award for outstanding leadership. 8 principals. That is big, and congratulations on that. I mean, I don't know how you did it, and I know, along with my colleagues, how they said it's teamwork, but I do feel like that you have to be highlighted for that as well. Also, seeing the cheerleaders here, thank you to the parents, because it comes with parents having to bring them and having to pick them up in practices. And so thank you so much for being part of that. Thank you for being here. It shows the community, the Mesquite community, it shows that it's here. Sometimes I see one of my colleagues here, Ms. Claudia Rodriguez, she's always, parents, come and show up. And seeing you guys here, I mean, it already speaks a lot about the school. And so I'm very grateful for being here today, so thank you for that. Also, yes, too many students are there wearing their mask, and I thank you guys for that. I thank the parents for that as well, the teachers. Yes, this is not over, but we're trying to be safe, and we will continue to work together to keep our children and our families safe. I did attend the coffee with the principal at Santa Teresa Elementary and the coffee with the principal at Santa Teresa Middle School. So a lot of projects. I'm excited for this year. It seems like Gadsden is coming. You know, there's a lot of highlights, and I'm very excited about what is the next coming years. I know it takes time, but it's coming quick, and I'm very excited to be part of that. I thank the legislators, Mr. Ray Lara, Willie Madrid, and our Senator Joseph Cervantes. I mean, thank you so much for all your work. I know you guys, on top of that, having to represent all of us, have your daily 8 to 5 job, if not 8 to 10 o'clock job. And so the fact that you guys are over there advocating for us, I thank you for that. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Murillo. Madam President, that concludes the superintendent updates and recognitions.
Thank you, Superintendent. Moving on to Human Resources Report, that is just for the public knowledge. No action is required on the behalf of the board. Moving on to item 5, do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept the agenda as is.
Okay, Vice President Castillo has made a motion to accept the agenda as is. Superintendent Dempsey?
So recommend.
All in favor? Aye. Aye. Motion passes. Moving on to item 6, our regular school board minutes for February 10, 2022. Do I hear a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the regular school board minutes for February 10th, 2022.
Secretary Rodriguez has made a motion to accept the board minutes for February 10, 2022. Superintendent Dempsey?
So recommend.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passes. Moving on to our consent agenda. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept the consent agenda.
Mr. Castillo has made a motion to accept the consent agenda. Superintendent Dempsey?
So recommend.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Ms. Delgado, do we have anybody for open forum?
Madam President, we have 2 open forums.
Okay. Do you want to do it? Oh, actually, these are the ones that I gave you, Ms. Delgado. So are they here? I think this is the past.
Oh, are those from last board meeting?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So then we don't.
Then we don't have.
Okay, so we don't have anybody present. Okay. So these were from the last time I actually handed them to her, so just so here you go. Okay, moving on to item 9, action items. There's actually no action items this evening. So we're going to move on to item 10, A, Gadsden and Chaparral Middle School Ed's presentation. Superintendent Dempsey.
Madam President, board members, Ms. Vela is going to help us with this item.
Good evening, Board President, Board Member, Superintendent Dempsey. First of all, I just want to introduce myself because I haven't met Ms. Murillo. I'm Nancy Vela, I'm the construction coordinator, and I work with Mr. Gallegos. So it's my pleasure to bring to you this time the presentation of the educational specifications and building system analysis reports for Gadsden and Chaparral Middle School. I just want to give you a brief summary of what we have done for this project. On June 14, 2021, Mr. Gallegos and I present to the PSEOC, the Public School Capital Outlay Council, a request for the standards-based funding for both schools. On July 14, we received the award letters for both schools, and the PSEOC decided to fund the projects by phases. The first phase is the planning phase, then we're going to have the design phase, and then the construction phase. On August 16, we got the MOUs to start with the planning phase. On September 23rd, we present to the school board for discussion both projects, and on October 7th, we present them for action to get cooperative strategies to work in the planning phase. We also have, I don't know if Ms. Carrie Ann Wolf from Cooperative Strategies, if she's online, she will help us to also give you a presentation so you can see the report on the planning phase that we have done. Ms. Wolf, can you start?
Good evening, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for having us. I'm Carrie Ann Wolf. And I'm going to actually turn down the volume on my phone because I was listening on my phone as the directions provided. So thank you for having us. I'm Carrie Ann Wolf with Cooperative Strategies. I'm one of 3 members of our team that worked on this project. Thank you for having us, Superintendent and Board, tonight. And I don't know, we've had the opportunity to communicate with Mr. Snowdy, but there was like a 33-page PDF, I think, that Ms. Vela sent over. I don't know if you have the ability to open that or if I have the ability to share my screen. I could do that. So as far as the technology piece goes, I don't know if it's easier for you all to present on your end so that the board can see, or if there's a way that I can share my screen.
Good evening, Ms. Wolf. Yes, go ahead and share your screen. Thank you.
Can I present?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Thank you. Can you see the PDF that's open?
Yes. Just go ahead.
Okay. Okay, that looks like it. Okay. Yeah. All right, so board members, I know you received 2 separate reports, one on Chaparral Middle School and one on Gadsden Middle School. And each of those reports was approximately 125 to 150 pages. So it's a lot of information to read through. And the 30-slide presentation I have for you tonight is a very high-level overarching summary of that document. So there were 2 parts of our process. This timeline shows we began our process in November with the building systems analysis, and 2 of our team members came out and walked both Gadsden Middle School and Chaparral Middle School, evaluating all of the different systems, and I'll talk about that a little bit in just a moment. For the campus master planning and educational specifications, there was more of a process to that where we spoke with teachers. We internally reviewed the state adequacy standards and drafted space types, quantities, and sizes. We had planning labs, one virtually in December and one in person in January. And then as you see here tonight is our report to you all. So I'll first just give a very high-level review of the Chaparral Middle School Building Systems Analysis. These are all of the different sections that are the condition and analysis piece of the report that you received. That, again, is the first approximately 30 pages or so of the report and reviews things like each system, so roofs, windows, walls, plumbing, lighting, mechanical, electrical, etc. Then we move into the report where we give a couple of facility options and estimates in relation to that, and then concluding remarks, observations, and recommendations. So this is just an overview of Chaparral Middle School, describing when it was constructed, the size of the site, and the exterior pieces of that site. We'll talk a little bit more about this piece once I get into the educational specifications. On the next slide, we talk a little bit more about our overarching recommendation for the site for Chaparral. Upon completion of the building systems analysis, discovered that the condition of the facility would indicate that it would be more favorable to complete a renovation or a major renovation of this facility with a small addition to accommodate the projected enrollment for this site. We also provided a breakdown, a cost breakdown here of what it would be to completely replace this facility. We do have in this major renovation cost what we call a major renovation. However, I would think that because this building is in good condition and the age of this building would indicate that you could probably do either a moderate or even minor renovations on parts of the facility. Once you bring an architect and the design team on board, they would be able to determine a little more specifically based on the adequacy of the adjacencies of the facility, what would be most appropriate, what level of renovation for different portions of the facility would be most appropriate. So based on the systems analysis that was conducted, the building is in need of some internal and mechanical updates, but the physical building itself is not past its useful life and can continue to serve the district for many more years to come. So I want to talk a little bit now about the educational specifications in the campus master plan. This is a review of the adequacy regarding mostly the square footage of spaces that are already in place and some of the spaces that are deficient, and you'll see that we accommodated that with the additional square footage that we are suggesting in the new or renovated facility. This is a slide that indicates the projected enrollment specifically for Chaparral Middle School. You see here we show K through 8. So the K6 portion of this would show the buildings that feed into the Chaparral Middle School. When we look at planning for the facilities and PSFA looks at the projections, we look at a 5-year projection. So if you look at the very next to bottom line, we have 619. That's the enrollment that we're planning for this renovated or new facility. In addition to that 619, we add a 10% growth factor on that in case their enrollment fluctuates up. We want to be prepared for that, or in case you get additional growth. So later in this document, you'll see that we've added 10% to that. So we planned actually a facility that would hold 680 students. This is an evaluation of the current facility as it stands. If we were able to fill every classroom, every period with the maximum number of students that are allowed by state standards, this building would hold close to 1,200 students. However, we know that's not reality. We know that not every classroom can be used every period throughout every day. And so we do a calculation of the rooms that are currently being used. We create a functional capacity, that's the table at the bottom, and then we apply what's called a utilization factor. As we said, not every room can be used every period, every day, so the utilization factor that we've calculated here is 75%, and that gets us to a capacity for this facility, the current facility, of 713 students. Now, if we change that utilization factor to 80%, that 713 also increases to a higher value. So in reviewing the space types that we created throughout the educational specifications process, and as part of that process, we did an exercise where we created ideal adjacencies in the facility. How do spaces lay out one next to each other to facilitate student instruction and collaboration? We took those ideal adjacencies and overlaid them on this facility, and then tried to use the spaces that were already in place. So again, this is simply a beginning of a recommendation. Once you bring an architect on board and they begin the design process of either a renovation or a new facility, some of this might be tweaked, but this is a place for them to begin. So we did do some overlay, and this is to scale to the degree possible. And you'll see in the upper left-hand corner those white spaces with the red font. Those are some music spaces that we were suggesting would be the additional square footage that's necessary for the projected population. And then the other wings or hallways, we've included not only the classrooms and special ed dispersed throughout, but also teacher planning areas, extended learning areas, and so on. And then, of course, we've displayed some of the required exterior spaces like parking, playfields, and so on. So this is a high-level overview of the space requirements that, again, is included in the documentation that we shared. You see there in the upper left-hand corner the table that indicates the number of students that Chaparral should be planned for, 680 students. That divided by the total square footage, that 89,088 square feet is the target square foot, gross square feet that the state adequacy standards would dictate is appropriate for 680 students. So as we planned the spaces, not only did we look at the programs that the middle schools are offering, we looked at the adjacencies, we also determined sizes, quantities based on reaching that square foot target. So the table on the right-hand side lists an overarching listing of all of the different space types included in the facility, the number of teaching stations that are included at each program area, and then the square feet for each of those. So one of the requirements of this of the outcomes of this process was to create a potential phasing plan. So what you'll see in these next three slides, are the phases for which Chaparral Middle School could conduct the renovations. Again, once a designer is on board, these may be modified, but this is a place potentially to begin. So phase one in the left-hand side, we would suggest to potentially begin by modifying or renovating the cafeteria and the kitchen. That doesn't mean to add two kitchens there. We created two little blocks there to indicate the current kitchen size is smaller than it should be for the projected population. So a modification of those spaces to accommodate the extra square footage there. The upper left-hand corner, again, are those music spaces that we're suggesting be constructed new. And then phase two, we would suggest to modify that shortest wing first, and you would accomplish that by keeping the students in the building, but moving them to the other wings, and then potentially having teachers swing their prep periods so that they're not planning in a classroom, and instead students can be educated in those classrooms and teachers can plan in other spaces. The third phase would then be to go to that middle wing and renovate those spaces and expand the media center. The media center, as it is currently, serves the population just fine. There are a few additional spaces that you'll see in the breakdown of the space requirements that we would suggest be added to the media center. And then phase four would be to move to the last wing to conduct the renovation, and then to end the renovations with expanding the administration into that commons area, and also modify the current gymnasium spaces. So appropriate to stop now and ask for questions, or to continue to Gadsden.
Go ahead and continue with the Gadsden, please.
Portion of the presentation. Okay, thank you. So the Gadsden portion of the presentation mirrors the Chaparral. So again, the three different portions here in the presentation on conditions and analysis, options and cost estimates, and recommendations. This again is an overview of Gadsden. As you all know, Gadsden has more permanent facilities and is a larger facility overall. The acreage is similar to Chaparral. When we conducted the building systems analysis and looked at the condition of each of those systems, in addition to some of the educational inadequacies of the facility as far as the adjacencies and how the facility is laid out, we would actually recommend new construction at Gadsden Middle School. However, we have provided both a breakdown for the costs of a new middle school versus a partially renovated middle school. We do know that you have a classroom annex that was constructed approximately 2009, and it's in good condition, and that could be renovated. We also know there's a potential desire to maintain the current gymnasium space and the multi-purpose spaces that are in that same facility. So on the right-hand side here, you see a major renovation of gym. That's the gym building, not just the gymnasium itself. So all of the support spaces and the multi-purpose spaces within that facility are accounted for in that major renovation. We would suggest if you do a renovation on any of the other buildings, we would suggest potentially a minor renovation of the classroom annex, and then the remainder square footage would be built new. So you can see there the difference between the new and renovated, and we'll talk a little bit more about how that might all get laid out on the site. So again, based on the systems analysis, we would say that the best option for Gadsden would be new construction. However, there are, again, ways to accomplish it with a combination of new construction and renovation. So this table is the adequacy analysis of Gadsden. We don't have any square footage deficiencies for the educational spaces. The deficiencies showed up in parking on this site. This is a larger building than the current Chaparral, so it makes sense that we would not see square footage deficiencies here. This table shows us the projected enrollment for Gadsden Middle School, again, showing us the feeders, and then also the 7th and 8th grade enrollment. Again, if you look across at the 5-year projected enrollment, the 657 number, we use that number, again, adding in the 10% for growth, got us to about 725 or so, and then when we worked through creating the appropriate quantities and adjacencies, we had to add just a few more numbers to that, so I think we ended up at 732 as a projected planning enrollment for this facility. So again, just like with Chaparral, if we filled every classroom, every period, every day at 100% capacity, this building could potentially hold 1,800 students. That's just not realistic in any building to have 100% utilization and to use every building, every period. So the functional capacity in the table below shows us realistically how many classrooms we're currently using and how we might load those classrooms and the total number of students that this facility could reasonably serve at a utilization of about 75%. And you'll see that number's closer to 1,000 students there. So this illustration shows us what an ideal adjacency might be for either Chaparral or Gadsden. We've included it here to show, just like in any facility, you would enter the facility through the administration area, core academics near the front, those red spaces that you see there with all of the support spaces built in there, extended learning areas, teacher planning, special needs. The center of the facility also would include some self-contained special needs, as well as some elective spaces like family consumer science classrooms, also the music and visual arts rooms, and then as you move towards the back of the facility, cafeteria, gymnasium, and those support spaces. The spaces that surround on the exterior, again, these would be what we would suggest as ideal locations for those exterior pieces. As the design professional comes on board, they can do additional further evaluation of the sites to determine the most appropriate locations for those. This is an adjacency exercise that we did, again, during our second planning lab, where we took those ideal adjacencies and said, okay, if we overlaid them on the site, how might we modify this facility? And so you see big red square there. It says minor renovation of classroom annex. As I talked earlier about potentially renovating portions of that, that could be potentially the core academics wing. On the right-hand side, we have a little major renovation of the gymnasium with some cafeteria space adjacent. And then the middle spaces, admin, self-contained, special ed, the elective spaces in the library could potentially be built new in that space. When we reviewed this internally, we discussed the possibility that that might be a really tight spot in between those two renovated facilities to construct new there. So you may have to move back to the playgrounds and play fields a bit to do construction in order to have enough space for the vehicles and other construction equipment on site as you're completing that. So these three tables, similar to the tables I showed you for Chaparral, indicates the number of students in the school, the square footage that's appropriate for that projected enrollment, 92,675 square feet. And then the table on the right lists all the different program areas that would be contained with the number of teaching stations and the square feet attached to each of those program areas. So for phasing for this particular project, if you were to go for all new construction at Gadsden, we would suggest that you could construct the new middle school behind the front portion of the building and then move students into that new building and then demo and abate the existing middle school and then complete the rest of the site work like parking lots, drop-off loops, and playgrounds and play fields. If you were to go with the option where you're going to renovate potentially the classroom annex and or the gymnasium, you would renovate those existing spaces, begin construction of the new spaces, then abate and demolish a portion of the original existing building, and then construct the new administration area and complete construction of the outdoor pieces. So I know that's a lot of information to throw at you. I know you also received the full report. We just wanted to hit the highlights for you tonight. And so I'm going to stop sharing and then just ask for questions at this point.
Thank you, Ms. Wolf. Board members, do you have any questions?
Questions, comments, concerns?
I have two questions. First, on the slide where it had the portables at Chaparral Middle School, those are the current portables there? It was a total of 8, right? Yes.
4 doubles.
There are a total of 8 portables currently, yes.
Okay, thank you. And on these slides and consideration of both Gadsden Middle School and Chaparral, do we include possible space for, to move in more than what we currently have, the number of students that we currently have? I know that one of the recommendations or that during our
Facility master planning.
During the strategic planning, I'm sorry, I spaced out during the strategic planning, parents had, one of the things that they were asking is like a 6th grade academy. So the thought here, or what I'm picturing is that, is there any possibility to have those kids housed at the middle school? And if so, is there enough space with all these recommendations here?
So I'm sorry, I'm going to turn the instructions for the technology tonight were to listen on one device and talk on the other, so I'm hearing an echo of myself. So currently, as we've planned the facilities, they're to house only the 7th and 8th grade. However, both sites certainly have enough room to grow so that if you do decide to put a 6th grade academy within the adjacent to or as part of this facility, by all means, you do that. If the sixth grade comes to fruition, and if that comes to fruition in time for design and certainly construction, you may need to revisit some of the core spaces like the cafeteria. I think the cafeteria would be the only space that you might need to look at upsizing if in fact you decide to bring the sixth grade onto the site.
Does that answer your question? So right now, no, but it could be figured in there and designed to accommodate the sixth grade wing if the funding was available.
I do have questions. So actually piggybacking, I have the exact same question as Ms. Rodriguez. So at the goodness gracious, that meeting that we had, the strategic planning, the parents had requested that sixth grade academy. So is it just a sixth grade academy, sir, or are we planning, because there was also discussion either at that meeting or some other meeting where we're thinking of maybe moving all of sixth graders into the middle school in order to help alleviate the number of students in our elementary schools?
Madam President, board members, that has been a topic of conversation to try to size this so that that option is very much available. And we know that, especially at Chaparral, that's one of our fastest growing communities. And you know, our newest elementary school really doesn't have room right now for what we have enrolled. And so that would be definitely my recommendation, is to try to size these so that that is an option for the district in the future.
Okay. And then on Gadsden Middle School, I did notice, I think on, I'm not sure if it was the suggestion to renovate or the one to totally build a new campus. As a special education teacher, I did notice that you have special education self-contained, separated from everybody else, and that kind of, it honestly bothers me because, you know, special education classes, I believe, should be part with the other classes and not be separating like we always have. So I'm not sure if I saw that correctly.
And that's
Seems like a big classroom, but separated.
That's a conceptual, that's an idea of all of these programs have to fit together, all of these classes, accommodating the needs of the school, which is going to be your special ed case, special ed self-contained classes, close enough to the nurse and the other services that they use often, but yet make sure that they're spread out throughout the school so that they do integrate through the whole population.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, that would be the self-contained class, easy access to the nurse. Those would probably be our D-level service students, but the other classes where it's, they'd still be self-contained are spread throughout the rest of the building?
Correct. That would be the idea there.
Okay, thank you.
And that would come in the design with architect.
I think that concludes my questions. Any further questions, comments, or concerns?
In summarizing that, as you know, we have spent several months doing this ed specification as required by the PSFA, PSCOC. Our PSFA regional manager came in late from Alamogordo and was not able to be with us tonight. He is online. Mr. Mike Ortiz is our regional manager. One of the factors, as you saw in the pricing, is that complete renovation of Gadsden Middle School is at $66 million. We were allotted $47 million, so that already puts us in a position to go back to the state and hopefully request further funding, but any further funding that we request would currently cost the district 30% of that funding. So, example, if we have to request $15 million, we'd have to come up with about $4.5 million district dollars. And the renovation at Chaparral Middle School, which is the direction of the ed specification, is that we do use renovation, and we're still short about $4 million on that one. So if we go back and we get the $4 million from the state, then that means we have to come up with another $1.2 million there. So currently, the concept would be that we'd have to come up with $6 million to complete these two schools. That is, as long as the construction costs don't keep rising as they currently are. You probably heard gas is going to hit over $100 a barrel. So that drives everything up. Next step, once we approve this on March 10th, is to come back to the board on March 10th for approval, and then do an RFP for the selection of the architects for those two sites. Stand for any other questions.
I did come up with another question just in case parents were thinking the same thing, because I know in both campuses, I'm thinking the answer is probably going to be no, but just to make sure, our fields out there in Gadsden Middle School and Chaparral High School, they've never actually had a track and field, I don't know, so is that included or is that not included?
Currently, the finances don't allow for that in the current plan. That doesn't mean that if somebody doesn't come up with a bunch of extra money, that couldn't be included, but correct me, Carrie Ann, if I'm wrong, the fields, renovation of the fields and updating of the fields is not included in this. This is strictly the building.
Okay, so
There is some site work, but construction of the full track and field is not part of that.
Okay, and that's good to know because I think for the history of both campuses, because they're not, I guess, adequately built, therefore we can't have track meets, correct? So never in the history of either school. Okay, so that I would say that'd be something to think about, to actually have the opportunity to have track meets at these campuses or whatever occurs in the fields. Thank you for your answers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to discussion item 10B, Berino HVAC replacement, Superintendent Dempsey.
Madam President, board members, Mr. Gallegos is going to present this item.
First and foremost, good evening, board members, board presidents, Superintendent Dempsey. We're here to discuss, the first one will be Berino Elementary HVAC upgrade. I do have with us, and I'd like to introduce them, and they're available for answering questions also, is Mr. Cesar Molina, who is the president of 9 Degrees. He's actually a Gadsden High School graduate back from last century, but you know. And then we have Mr. Michael Bluth, who also works for the 9 Degrees. So they are the architects who have worked and designed this upgrade on the HVAC system. I'm going to now move so you can see the units that we're going to do, and then we'll answer any questions. As I did last time, we brought together a little showing here of the Berino. Let me put it up here close so you can see that. All the little black spots here, those are air conditioners right now. They're RTU, they're Lennox brand air conditioners. They're about 11, 12 years old, which is ending their life cycle. Life cycle of an HVAC is anywhere from 13 to 15 years of age. So we are going to replace those with Trane HVAC units now that we have the opportunity, so that each of those units will be replaced with a brand new Trane tied into the system and updated so that we can have the latest and greatest RTU or rooftop unit for heating and cooling that school. It's simply a replacement one-for-one. At Berino, there's very little, if any, interior work, maybe to make some adjustments to remove the heating coils that were left there when we renovated that school, disable the boiler, and then the rest of it will be some gas work so that we can connect all those units. So I stand for questions, or we can turn it over to Michael and Cesar, who designed this. Do we have any questions on the Berino Elementary HVAC project?
Questions, comments, concerns? I don't believe so.
Thank you. We will bring this back for approval. It went out to an RFP indicating a request for proposal for the contractor. The committee has gone through that process, and it will be coming back to the school board on March 10th for approval of the contractor. Little information that you may or may not know, because of the delay of equipment, something we did different on 3 HVAC projects this year, which is Berino, Anthony, and Gadsden Gadsden High School, which will all come up on March 10th, is that we ordered the equipment on the Gadsden dime, so I did the PO, got the equipment ordered so that it would get here hopefully by the summer. The Berino equipment is a little bit delayed compared to the other one, which estimated to be here in August, but the Anthony equipment as well as the Gadsden High equipment will come up in sections here in April through June. All right? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to discussion item 10C, now Anthony HVAC replacement.
Madam President, board members, again, Mr. Gagos will present this item.
Once again, board members, President Flores, Mr. Dempsey, we have a drawing of the Anthony Elementary Public School here. As you can see, we remodeled this whole section here, which is the original Anthony Elementary, and added this back in the 2009 to 2011 era. At this time, it is time to replace all these units. The one big difference here is that there will be some work in the library so that we can reallocate. We're going to turn some of those units around so that they can work better. So there'll be some roof work or ceiling work in the library in redoing those units. But other than that, it's a swap, one for one. They put in a new curb in the existing area. They remove the old RTU, and then they put in a new RTU, do the test and balance, connect it all into the building control unit of Tracer or Ensemble, and then the rest is train units, so we'll get the latest and greatest. Again, that equipment has been ordered. First bunch of that equipment is scheduled to come in May, with the second bunch in June. So we will bring back the recommendation for the contractor on March 10th, so that if everything rolls smoothly, we can get them online and get them started so that they can be ready to hit road running soon as the equipment arrives, and they can get ahead of this and do a lot of this work during the summer so we can inconvenience the school the least possible. I stand for any questions.
Any questions, comments, or concerns? Go ahead, Mel.
Thank you, Madam President. Just one, you mentioned that you would get it up and running, and how much will it interfere for our Jumpstart program during the summer?
Currently, we will not be running the summer programs at those schools because of this work, because that makes it a lot simpler. Instead of having to try to put kids out, we do the programs in another site, and it helps out the school construction during the summer. Now, if it flows into, which it should flow into the fall, in August, then we work with it. Then we might be able to displace 2 to 4 classrooms, put them in the library, put them in an empty classroom, so that they do have heating and cooling while they replace those units. Because those units are pretty big. I mean, those units are, if you see the length of that 3 tables there, they're the length of 2 of those tables and twice as wide and 3 times as tall. So they do need a crane to move those up and down, and it's not like just putting a swamp cooler on your house or an HVAC system on your house. It takes some time and effort to do all the electrical, the gas, as well as install a new curb, get it all hooked up, and then coordinated and test and balanced. So each of those, minimum of a week probably to install in a classroom if we roll back into the school year.
So just to make it, so I understand this, all the ducts and everything is replaced or changed when these new systems are put in, or we just keep what is currently in place?
The only thing that will be changed will be the unit itself on top of the roof. The ductwork will remain the same in all areas with some modifications. They'll put some VAVs and VA so that they can adjust airflow in there like that. So there'll be minor minor work inside. So the ductwork is cleaned out, it is refurbished, it's checked on, and if there's any leaks or anything of that nature, then they're dealt with at that time, because there is a test that they have to do to make sure that the leakage is not there, that the ductwork is in good shape. So if there was some ductwork that was bad, then that would be replaced. But typically on an HVAC system, refrigerated air, your ductwork doesn't go bad for many, many years. It's not like the swamp cooler where it's pumping in moist air, which then rusts those ductwork. So HVAC stays fairly consistent and good and clean. It might create a few leakages over time, but those are easily concealed and plugged in by a certain system.
Any further questions, comments? I'm going to piggyback on what she was asking. So if I'm understanding correctly, so HVAC ducts don't, because I have no clue about this stuff. It's like, while we're changing it, do they need to be cleaned out or no?
It's always recommended to clean them out, especially you've seen the dust in the last few days here with the wind blowing. So that dust gets into the ductwork just like it gets into anything else. So whenever we do an HVAC upgrade, we have them clean out the ductwork so that we don't blow that dust back into the classrooms. Naturally, some of that does settle back in there. And then the rusting part, because there's no humidity going in from the refrigerated air, it's just regular cold air, not in a humid air. The ductwork does not rot unless some moisture, a leak or something has happened to get into that ductwork.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gallegos. Thank you, gentlemen.
You're welcome. Do you want to say anything?
Oh, sure. Well, good afternoon. My name is Cesar Molina, and we'd like to take this opportunity to thank the board and thank Mr. Gallegos and Ms. Nancy for giving us an opportunity to share our talents with the district. I'm a proud alumni of Gadsden High School, and we welcome the opportunity to work with the district. Our firm has been fortunate enough to work at the El Paso district, Isleta and Socorro, and we look forward to bringing those talents to serving our home district here. So I'd like to publicly thank you and Mr. Gallegos and Nancy for that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to say it for Mr. Castillo. Go Panthers, right? Okay, moving on to discussion item. It's the 9D, the 2022-23 school calendar. Superintendent Dempsey.
Madam President, board members, Mr. Wogelmuth is going to help us present our process here for our future adoption of our school calendar.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, thank you for having me representing the academic services team tonight. I'm going to let you know, I've noticed that I'm going to have to access my Davis Vision to go get my eyes checked because I can barely see that screen. So if I head up there later, it's because I'm having a tough time seeing. So we used a little bit different process in starting our calendar construction this year, and we did do a pre-survey to sort of guide how to construct some calendars to select from. So Mr. Snowdy, next slide, please. So anytime we put a calendar together, our goal of the calendar is to make sure we can maximize student learning, along with making sure we give teachers time to team and plan. Teaming and planning is key to continuing to move our district forward. Next slide, please, Mr. Snowdy. So here I've given a brief summary of the steps we've taken to gather some input prior to constructing these two calendars today. We had a pre-survey that was sent out a couple of weeks ago to the staff via email and to parents via Remind. We received in total almost 1,900 responses, 1,851 responses. About half were parents and the other half were staff members. Also, I want to mention, if you do want to see this slideshow a little in depth, I did send it to your email, so you'd like to access it there. We reviewed the surveys with the principals and the parents last week on Thursday. We met with staff representatives last Friday again. We had a meeting scheduled with parents last night, those parents that were selected for the committee. Unfortunately, none of them attended the invite, so we'll have to look at a way to reach out to them again. However, we did have some good parent input or good parent attendance at the coffee with the superintendent last week. We also shared this with our student representatives yesterday in district leadership, as well as our trenches teachers yesterday as well. Of course, tonight we're presenting to you the pre-survey results, as well as some draft calendars, and of course we'll look for some additional parent and staff input over the next 2 weeks as needed. Next slide, Mr. Dempsey. So I just wanted to share this slide with you here. This gives you a breakdown of the responses by school for parents. So if you do glance at that bar graph now or in the future, you can see the response rates counts by campus from our parents. Next slide, please, Mr. Snowdy. So one of the first questions that we opened up, for our staff, we didn't have a lot of open-ended questions, but one of them was, in order to support teacher teaming and planning, how do they, what do they suggest needs to be different about the school day, the school year, or the school calendar? And so this is a word cloud that sort of shows and emphasizes what the teachers felt they needed support with in their calendar. And so it's wonderful to see. The biggest word there is work. They, looking to work, really days or time during the day, and of course it's great to see here that planning and students is also key on teachers' minds. So that's a summary of their narrative responses at the start of the survey. Next slide, Mr. Snowdy. So these next few slides were questions that specifically went out to teaching staff and staff in the building, really asking about where they wanted some of their planning days distributed. There's 3 different categories here: administrators, certified staff, and classified staff. And so when we look at the draft calendars a little bit later, those draft calendars were built based on this feedback. So you'll see a direct reflection on where these planning days are on that calendar. So again here, they're telling us they want their planning days divided up evenly between the beginning of each semester. Next slide, Mr. Snowdy. We asked them when they wanted their fall teacher work days, so that work day where they work in their classroom with no admin interruptions. This was the closest tie of all. We had half our certified staff saying they want it on Monday, and half the certified staff saying they want it on Friday. So that's kind of a toss-up. Next slide, Mr. Snowdy. We asked them when they wanted their spring work day. They preferred the first day back in the spring semester versus the last day of their contract. Next one, Mr. Snowdy. We asked them what they would prioritize for a school holiday. Now, these next 3 slides are going to show you what our certified, what our in-building staff wanted, what our S&P and PPD wanted, as well as what our parents preferred in both the English and Spanish response. So what you're going to notice here is that in all of the slides that we're going to click through here really quickly, the spring holiday, Friday, September 7th, which traditionally around here is Good Friday, was the priority for all of the groups. And then the second priority was Veterans Day for all of the groups. And the third priority for all of the groups was Election Day. So Mr. Snowdy, if you just want to click to the next one, that is our physical plant and student nutrition folks' responses. Next one, Mr. Snowdy. Again, this is our parents responding in Spanish, again indicating their preference of the spring holiday. And finally, Mr. Snowdy, for this question, we have the English respondents on the parent survey overwhelmingly saying spring holiday, and of course Veterans Day being number 2. Next slide, Mr. Snowdy. Length of fall break, same question to our parents and staff members in the building. We said long weekend, or like we have it. Overwhelmingly on these next 3 slides, you'll see that the selection was 5 days, please. So next one, Mr. Snowdy, there's our parent Spanish respondents, and the next one, Mr. Snowdy, that is the English parent respondents, all overwhelmingly indicating the desire for it to be 5 days. Next slide, Mr. Snowdy. We also asked, this was a question we wanted feedback on from our parents and our teachers. What structure do you prefer for your parent-teacher conferences? So a couple of options. We have a day like a Wednesday, perhaps 11 to 7 11 a.m. to 7 p.m., no students. Would you prefer that, or would you prefer a model where where the kids go to school all day Thursday, then after school the teachers stay for about 3 hours for some evening parent conferences on a Thursday, and then of course there's no school on Friday. Teachers return for that Friday morning for 4 hours of morning conferences for parents, and then teachers leave a half day. We gave them those options. Again, for all of our respondents, they indicated that they preferred a Thursday afternoon conference, Friday morning conference, and of course no students on Friday. Next one, Mr. Snowdy. Again, 2 more. These are our Spanish respondents for that question and our English respondents for that question. Next slide. So these next few slides deal with trying to address and getting teacher feedback on how we address that time that is requested for additional planning and additional teaming. So we kind of sought 4 different bits of feedback on how that professional development could be integrated into the school calendar, that being a priority, which, you know, I'll explain, I think we all recognize as educators is needed in our profession, and I'll give some more detail a little bit later. So this question was, how many additional days would you consider working without students above what you're working this year? Okay, so we're working 190 days. We're saying beyond 190 days, how many days would you be willing to work additional with no students for planning and preparation? So this was an interesting one. For the certified staff, half the certified staff said, we'll work 5 more days. The other half of the certified staff said, we don't want to work any more days additional. And then we had a middle group that say we could work a couple of more days. So that was one question we asked, you know, would you be willing to work more days for professional development? Next one, Mr. Snowdy. The other question, an additional question we asked was, would you be willing to work an additional 30 minutes each day, adding 30 minutes to your workday to accommodate planning and preparation? This one was pretty clear. The heavy majority of all groups said that they would not be in favor of working an additional 30 minutes a day for planning and preparation. Next one, Mr. Snowdy. We also asked if Saturday PD was provided, would they attend Saturday PD? Of course, if it was going to be on a Saturday, we would compensate them. But again, most of our staff indicated that you know, Saturday PD is not the option that they are looking for. And then this last question is kind of a new question, and we asked this to all of our constituent groups, parents included, because it's different and it would impact things differently. So this one says, in order to support teacher teaming and planning, would you and teacher overload, would you support early out or early release? And we're asking them, would you support it once a week? Would you support it twice a month? Would you support it once a month, or not at all? So I will talk a little bit more in detail after this portion about what an early out would look like, because it's a little bit different. But all 3 groups, you'll notice, and it'll be in the blue and it will be in the red. The blue indicates on all of these slides they'd be willing to support an early out once a week. Okay, that's the majority in all 3 selections that we're going to see here, parents and staff, English and Spanish. The second one is they would support it 2 times a month. And the yellow is once a month, and the green is not at all. So what you're going to notice in all 3 slides here, close to 2/3 or 3/4 of all the respondents would say, hey, we recognize teachers need more time to plan and prepare, so we'd be willing you know, to accommodate or support an early out multiple times a month. So again, you can see certified staff here, mostly once a week. Mr. Snowdy, next slide. Our Spanish-speaking parent respondents, again, blue indicating once a week, red indicating twice a week, the yellow indicating once a month. Next one, Mr. Snowdy. And the same type of trend here for our English-speaking respondent parents. Again, half of them said, close to half of them said they would support once a week early out, and another quarter said approximately twice a month. Okay, so those were the feedback from the families on this this idea of early outs, which I'll explain a little bit more in depth here shortly. We asked an additional question to our parents, and I want you to know, well, I'll talk about early outs in a second. We asked our parents if there were going to be early outs. Okay, an early out is not a half day. It's just out a little bit earlier than normal. Would you be able to find childcare for your child? We asked them that question to kind of get a vibe of if it was something they'd be able to do. So our Spanish responding parents, over 80% of them said yes, we could find or be able to take care of some child care on an early out if it occurred. And then closer to 90% with our English-speaking respondent parents said yes, we would be able to find supervision for our child. Next slide. So those are the survey results. Before we take a look at the calendar that I think Mr. Dempsey handed out to you that has these features blended in, I wanted to take a moment to share a little bit with you about this idea of early outs. And so, this idea of early outs, we really had some feedback in a partnership with a former Deputy Superintendent Clovis, where this was implemented, and it really spoke highly about the impact it had on student learning, and it had an impact on student learning because it had a great impact on teacher preparation. And then that's of course a small school district in New Mexico. We also received and did some consulting with Amphitheater School District in Tucson, which is about equivalent in size to us, same number of high schools, about the same number of middle schools, about 1,000 to 1,500 more students than us, and they do early out. So we kind of consulted with them on the positives and negatives of what they have experienced. So next slide. And we shared this with the parents at coffee with the superintendent. Why would we want to consider early outs? I think all of us recognize the teaching profession has changed. In the last several years, there's more required of teachers. Teachers are no longer just responsible for helping kids with their academics. They also are responsible for, SEL, other support, other reporting. And so we want to make sure, adding additional planning time and collaboration time where teachers can become experts in those, becoming an expert in Panorama, becoming an expert in the new, structured literacy initiative, expert in the adopted curriculum. We could really list the PLCs, evaluation of data. We could really list a lot of additional things that teachers need to have the time and space to do. In addition, new technology resources that teachers need to learn how to use. Those happen almost monthly and weekly. And then, of course, there's also other, we were talking with some of our other directors that are outside of the academic services department, and they really indicated, like the nursing department, indicated a strong need for training for their staff. And sometimes they find it challenging to train them at the level that they'd like to and support them at the level they'd like to, because when there's kids there, the nurses and the health assistants have to be there. So really, when we shared this with our non-academic services directors, they really saw a way for them to strengthen their people as well with more planning time. And I think a key factor here is that we have so many new teachers and new staff, and we have to figure out a way to make sure there's time and space for them to be trained and supported, because as we know, many of them are alternative certification, and they've come to us with bachelor's degree and great content knowledge, but not that the background in teaching. And so we have to be able to support them as well. Now, the power of team collaboration, I think all of us are members of teams, and there's a statement I put here is that the most effective teams in a school, in a district, on a campus, the highest functioning ones, have collaboration embedded in what they do. It's got to be time in the regular workday. Adding time outside of the workday is a bit of a challenge. As everybody knows, when you're trying to learn to do something, practice makes perfect. So if we need teachers to implement different programs and support our kids and understand their needs, then we need to give them time to practice and collaborate on what they need to do. I think that there's a spending, when the state shares with us, hey, more days with students, I think we can all support more days with students, but I think we want more quality days with our students. I don't know if more time is better, but better planned time and better spent time is better. The analogy I've been using is 15 McDonald's hamburgers is good, but maybe 5 from Five Guys or Shake Shack is better than 15. So we want quality time spent with our students versus the quantity of time. And then lastly, a bit of feedback we got from the folks in amphitheater and Clovis is that frequent early outs are better because, especially if you can do it weekly, there's teachers can practice and collaborate weekly and follow up weekly. They warned us that too much time in between early outs or too much time in between sheltered time professional development doesn't get the momentum that you need going. You kind of do something and then 3 weeks later you follow up. You don't get that rolling momentum that you need to improve. And so that was some feedback from them as well. Next slide. So this is a really super 30,000-foot view of what an early out might look like. So basically, and these are based on some models and feedback we got from these 2 school districts. So on selected Wednesdays, students would start school at their regular time, the normal start time, and they'd be released approximately 2 hours early. Students would, of course, at the early out time, would receive their bus transportation home. They would be fed prior to leaving campus, and then on a limited basis, school would have staff available to supervise students who weren't able to leave campus at the early out time, as long as the parent or the family can arrange for transportation no later than the regular release time. Then, very simply, when the students leave, the staff would engage in this structured planning and professional development. Next slide. So why now? Very simply, concluding this portion, teaching is different. The needs and the requirements of teachers and other staff in schools is different. School calendars and the school day and the school year, so those things haven't changed with what the needs of the profession are. Very similar to what it looked like, 50 to 100 years ago. This is a very overlooked thing. Like I said earlier, there's drastically fewer people entering education, and I don't think that's going to be solved by the colleges and universities anytime soon. I have hope that it will at some point. But we have to make sure that we shelter time and shelter opportunities for those new teachers to collaborate with the veteran teachers and to collaborate with each other to become better teachers. And in addition, we need that for our veteran teachers to mentor them and allow our veteran teachers to plan and prepare and take the lead with their departments and grade levels in some of these professional development opportunities. And then I think COVID-19 has illustrated some of these issues for us. So next slide. So as you look at this calendar here, and then I'm gonna, I think you all have been looking at it, and it's pretty simple. Then I'll kind of pause for questions about anything that you've heard. And I know that if I can't answer it, members of the academic services team will help me. When we made the calendars that were samples that were given to you, we have a couple of parameters that we have to follow. Teachers, as part of our current bargaining agreement, can only work 190 days. So that's the maximum time under our current bargaining agreement that we can have teachers working. In addition, the maximum time a day we can have them working under our current bargaining agreement is 7.5 hours. We are an extended learning time district, so students must attend 180 hours of school, 180 days of school a year. In total, over those 180 days, 990 hours spread out for K through 6, and 1,080 hours minimum 7 through 12 in those 180 days. So you have been presented 2 drafts that I know you've been looking at. The major difference between the 2 drafts is this. Draft A kind of retains our regular start date. It has a little bit longer winter break, and there is no President's Day, okay? And this is to make sure that in both calendars that we end before Memorial Day. The other calendar on the back, the major difference there is we start a little bit later. The winter break starts a little bit later, but we put back in President's Day to facilitate that. So, Mr. Snowdy, will you click on Draft A so I can make sure that before I answer questions, the school board members, I explain kind of the colors on here. So, there's the legend there, and I know you all have read the legend, and I hope you understand what you're reading. But again, the placement of these PD days, the placement of these parent conference days, the placement of vacations, that's a reflection of what you saw earlier in the survey, okay? So you can see the green days are teacher PD days, yellow days are work days for teachers to prepare and plan in their classroom. The days in black are vacations. We can see I put the tentative days on when the school board meetings might be here with an asterisk. You can see in blue the days with no students for parent conference, and the day with the 15th of September and the 16th of February. Those are the parent conference after school days. And then, of course, you can see on here the days, the Wednesdays in the bold outlines on both calendars are the proposed days for early outs. As was reflected in the pre-survey, we end our consultation with our 2 school districts we worked with. We did plan an early out frequently, which is almost every Wednesday, unless there was a holiday during that week. And so those were the 2 that those are the 2 calendars that were presented. We did a straw poll with our trenches teachers after the presentation yesterday. Our student leadership was the first group to see this on Wednesday morning. They kind of liked the early out idea because I think a lot of them are still feeling that pressure from the pandemic, and they're like, hey, that gives me a couple hours at home to catch up on this or do that, and I think they kind of saw that as a stress relief for them. But just as a quick straw poll of those 2 groups, they expressed to us that they preferred draft A. So that is a kind of a lengthy presentation. I hope it made sense. Hope I didn't talk too fast. Sometimes I get a little wild when I'm speaking, but I'll be happy to answer any questions, and if I can answer them, I know the academic services team is here to support. So questions or what feedback do you have?
Questions, comments,
yes, ma'am.
Concerns? Okay, we'll start. Do you guys? Okay, Ms. Rodriguez, go ahead.
Thank you. So you mentioned that there was a meeting with the parents that wanted to be part of the committee. Was there also representation by campus, I don't know, to be part of this committee, or was that separate?
So Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, Ms. Rodriguez, if you're referring to the staff members, right, the teachers on the committee, are you referring to that makeup?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say, one benefit of technology is we're really can include more people in our calendar committee than we have before. So every campus had the opportunity, and the departments had the opportunity to have and it just depends on my department, right? A teacher representative, a classified representative, and of course an administrative representative. So all of that was open for participation. I believe every campus had at least 1 representative from those categories, and I don't have my notes with me, but we had about 40 people, I think, in total in that particular meeting that we had.
Great, and so upon selecting that, was that, who selected who was going to be the campus representative? Was
Yeah, so that information, and, we follow what is, traditionally done in previous years. You kind of let the campuses decide. In previous years, we didn't allow because I used to be a member of the old committee. In previous years, they did not allow a member from each campus. It was, we want one high school administrator, one middle school administrator, one elementary teacher, one elementary classified. So it was more, the old committees in previous years were made up just of one representative from each class of, each group of people. Technology allowed us to open it up to, hey, you can have up to 3 from each campus. So, I think we had a good slice of campus representation overall, and a good slice of representation by each classification of employee.
I really appreciate the additional planning time. I think it's a great thing for our teachers, right? I know everyone is overwhelmed, and especially the teachers, and so giving them that extra planning time, I think, would be beneficial, and I agree with that. You said, let's see if I can find it here, spending more time and more days with students may not result in better outcomes, but a better trained teacher and higher quality lessons will result in improved student results. I totally concur with that. Doesn't mean that a teacher that's exhausted perhaps won't be able to give the 100%, and if they're given this opportunity to have more of the time to prep for this, then it might soothe some of that or alleviate some of that pressure that is there. So thank you for that. And one of the things that I did notice is that 935 staff members participated in this survey. I think it is very, very important for all of us to understand that in order to make changes, we need to be proactive. And so participating whenever there's a survey is going to make a big impact on what's going to happen in the future. So I really think that everyone, please try to participate and be a part of it. Your voice is important in every aspect of it. And the last thing is, I know this isn't part of the presentation here, or it's not included, but I've always wondered why graduation dates are not included on the calendar. I know it's always difficult for parents to plan ahead, but I would like to hear what the reasoning behind that is.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, I can give you an answer to that, having done a few graduations myself. So with UTEP, our days for graduation are not set until after the most recent graduation. So we had our ceremonies in May of 2021. Mr. Nichols usually doesn't meet to set dates with us until about the end of July, early August. So they're not reflected on this calendar here. However, and this is great feedback, we can always, when we get those dates set, we can always go back to this calendar and add the dates on there as soon as we have them. But we don't ever have them for this school year until this coming July. So we can absolutely add those. That's not a problem. I want to compliment UTEP. They've done a great job for us in really. They've sort of reserved, for planning purposes, to your point, Ms. Rodriguez, they've sort of reserved that Memorial Day weekend that kind of becomes Gadsden weekend. And so at minimum, the last 4 or maybe longer, 4 or 5 years, we've been able to at least tell our parents, hey, there's a very high probability that your ceremony is going to be at some point this Memorial Day weekend. So but I definitely see what you're saying, Wayne. We can get those on there as soon as we know. I'd love to try to get them on this year's calendar to get them reflected on there. I just have to see if I can get access to that thing and we can get it posted online.
Great, thank you.
Mrs. Murillo?
Yes, I have a question. Seeing the number of 916 parent participation, have we thought about different outlets on how to, like, not forcing, but encouraging our parents to participate? I know there's a lot of older, grandparents that don't have access to Remind, maybe sending the survey on paper with a student, or the teachers communicating this, or maybe a reminder. The reason that I'm saying this is because even my fellow neighbors, which they're watching, I am gonna put them on the spot, they don't even have access to Remind. And I had to guide them, and I had to teach them how to access the website. And so now I'm thinking, how can we encourage parents, because this will affect them. And you know how it is, once this comes out, the calls started to the principals and to the teachers. So I'm trying to help, with the communication. The other one, I am concerned with draft B, just because of December having 3 weeks off. Now I'm gonna think of, as a parent, having my child 3 weeks out of school, how will that be a setback for him when he comes back from break? Because it already becomes a setback in the summer, right? A month and a half, and then they start August, so it's a little bit of setback. And with the transition of from 2 weeks to 3 weeks, so I don't know if you guys have thought about that, and I would just like to hear your opinion about it.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, I would agree with you on the surveys. No, unfortunately, no method of survey is ever right, is ever perfect, and we can always improve that. And I'm going to get this wrong. Mr. Carmona shared with me. We sent obviously communicate the survey to parents in Remind, and so we kind of have a tracker on account tracker on there. And so you said, Mr. Carmona, 13.
Yes, right now, 1,200.
So 1,200 people saw the link for the survey, clicked on it, but of those 1,200, only 950 finished the survey. So some people are actually seeing the survey and even deciding, I don't know if I have time to complete this. And I think sometimes, and I definitely understand where you're coming from with some of our grandmas and grandpas and aunts and uncles with technology. But I think, we've got to kind of look at that, because we don't want to get duplicate, kind of surveys back. But you're absolutely right. I'm not a statistician, Ms. Murillo, but I do believe that you do get trends. So, I do believe that if every parent were to respond, the trends would probably be similar. But you're right in getting that out. As for the length of the Christmas break, so again, that's something that typically we have approximately these many days off. I'm going to tell you, just from the perspective of what's been shared for student attendance and why on draft A, obviously it's 2 weeks of vacation for teachers approximately in the black there. Then of course teacher planning days, and the kids don't come back until the 9th. So you're absolutely right. There's the 3 weeks there. The difference on the next one on draft B is they end a little bit later in the week. That's a little bit shorter break by 3 days. But the difference we always run into is when we have these weeks that are like half weeks, kids won't come, they come less those 3 days. So it's a cost benefit of, well, if we have class the 19th, 20th, and 21st of December, it shortens the break, but then a lot of the kids, they start, families, they'll have a tendency to start their break early. So part of the positioning of that, the way that some of these are, is trying to make sure you have as many full weeks as possible, because it's really the 3-day weeks that cause the problem, to get as many kids attending as possible. As for learning loss, I know Mr. Dempsey, Mr. Duggan is preparing some data to share with you. I don't know, I think it's going to be positive. I don't know if we can attribute poor student performance or better student performance to the length of a break. I'm going to go back to what Mrs. Rodriguez said. We can attribute better student performance to a better prepared, a better prepared student. But again, one thing that sometimes comes up to is this idea of a year-round or a continuous calendar, and that puts kind of those 2.5 week breaks a little more frequently. So again, don't have the data to support what's better either way, but I can give you justification about why whole weeks are sometimes better from an attendance perspective.
Thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Mr. Cano?
Question.
Yes, sir.
Now, with the calendar coming out or whatever the parents decide, okay, we still got that dreaded COVID around, that there's a chance that we might have to go virtual. Okay, we hope not. Just pray to God that we don't. How are we going to be handling that? Do we just continue the way we're going? The way the way we did at the beginning of the year, where we have to close down the school itself, or?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, that's an excellent question, Mr. Cano, and honestly, in putting this together, I was happily putting it together with not a thought of COVID in my mind. So, Mr. Dempsey, any thoughts on that?
Madam
I'm not going.
President,
I'll let Mr. Dempsey think about that.
members,
Okay.
Terrific question, and I agree with Mr. Wogemuth. There wasn't we didn't use a lens of COVID. I think we might ask ourselves, what have we learned through this process? And I think if, as time goes on and COVID cases stay low, we move away from some COVID-safe practices, I truly believe the experience that we've all been through, we could very quickly implement those. I mean, really probably in a incredibly short time. I think some things we've learned is having masks on hand are going to have to be a requirement. Having desk shields on hand is going to, having those things on hand for the next several years, I think is really I think we've learned enough to know we have to do those things so that if we see a surge, we're prepared to make those jumps. I'm going to also tell you, I think there's an incredible amount of learning in terms of online delivery. And while online delivery doesn't, I don't think any of us would believe that it gives you the same quality as face-to-face. I think we've proven we can shift, and in fact, it's happened to us this year where we had inclement weather days, and with a 2-hour delay, we were able to shift completely to remote learning. So I think what we've learned, I think we can quickly utilize that skill set and turn that if we needed to. I think maybe another question you might have, and some of us will remember this. At one point during the COVID peak, I guess, if you will, we talked about moving a break, right? And basically eliminating a break, because what do we know after a break? Typically, we saw an increase in cases. And that was met with 0 cheers, and we didn't end up going there. But there was a conversation, and that's not to say that as we approve this and we get into a situation we need to review the calendar, the board has the authority to do so as well. And so as a board, you always, this is the step 1 of the budget process, and budget is one of the 3 main things that boards are responsible for. So you very much as a board have the authority to come back to this calendar, and if you have obviously you want a really good reason, and make some adjustments if you feel needed.
And the reason why I asked about that is because I know that this year at Southwest University, where I teach, we added in December, when we came back from our in January, we added another week, which helped a lot with the COVID students that got sick over the holiday, just to make sure that they were in the clear before we fully bring the whole staff and everything back in. So in a way, I kind of like draft J, because it gives you that extra leisure. So in case, when we come back from a forbidden COVID rise, that at least we have that week to try to get set up on it. That's all I got.
Mr. Castillo, do you have any questions or comments?
Just a comment. As you guys saw by the surveys, there was nothing 100%. So we're not going to please everybody 100%.
Observation.
I applaud you for thinking, I'm an optimist, and, we should be thinking, all time at school. So, that's my mentality. My glass is half full, and we'll take it from there. Again, we're not going to please everybody, and that's just life. So I think we err in the side of the kids and bring them to school. Thank you.
Okay, so my questions, Mr. Walgamuth, is for either draft A or B, it's the same spring break. Does that coincide with DACC and MSU for our Alta Vista early college students?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, that was a key piece of feedback. So yes, the position of spring break does mirror DACC and MSU spring break for that exact fact that you mentioned. We also made, and this was a point too, we also made an adjustment to when fall break was for a similar reason. One, NMSU has the 10th, Monday, October 10th off for Indigenous Peoples Day, so that's a good alignment for our kids. And then there was also trying to work with our staff members who come from a variety of different places. One of their requests was, can something kind of line up with a fall break, EPISD, YSD, kind of help some folks out. And so it just so happened that week of the 10th of October helps our kids out for Indigenous Peoples Day at MSU when they had that off, but also aligns with some of our neighboring school districts to kind of support some of those, those kind of teacher needs. But we'll always align first with what's going to best serve the student needs.
Okay. And then my next question would be this. These two calendars would apply to any students who are choosing Admentum, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey. So yeah, we're gonna look into that. We will continue with building our virtual academy with Admentum next year, and our students would engage in this calendar. Being that the start and end dates overall are similar, the folks at Admentum were able to work with that. I've learned throughout the year, kind of going through this, they're probably a little more flexible with the kids than I gave them credit for. They're really good with the kids and saying, hey, you're off. You're off this week. You can take a little extra time to do this and do that. And so they've been great with the communication we've given them and being flexible for our kids. And as we build that virtual school and formalize things a little bit more, we can really make sure that alignment is even stronger with them.
Okay. My final question would be, help me understand, because I don't know, well, I'm not comprehending here. So Draft A does remove President's Day, where
yes, ma'am.
Draft B has it.
Correct.
So is there any way we can still keep President's Day? Because what I'm noticing is we start on the A draft with no President's Day, July the 25th versus the 27th. So what would happen if we were to add President's Day back on Draft A?
So what happens is it's this weird one day, right? What I learned in building a calendar, right? There's always a one day that hangs out there because you're trying to arrange everything. Really, that we look at the end day. We want to end before before Memorial Day. So when I tried to position on Draft A President's Day, it kept pushing back like the student start day to like a Friday. Or the student end day to like the Monday after Memorial Day, and so in order to keep that kind of block situated, that was the easiest way to do that. It also ended up pushing back. Like you'd have to come to school on Monday the 19th of December. So it was this one day that was creating this like one day week, or throughout the calendar. So that made the cleanest kind of start and end date.
Just a thought, I'm not saying do this, but would there possibly be a consideration of, I don't even know if this makes sense. Removing 2 of the early outs and to get the President's Day. I don't even know if that makes sense.
Okay, I mean, here's what Madam President, members of the Board, Superintendency, here's what I'll share with you. There is a little bit of a solution here, and we got away from it this year. So if you look at the 3 yellow days here, okay, those are really, teachers requested July 25th. They wanted a work day then, when they came back, right? They wanted a work day the first day back in January. We put a work day on the 26th of May for them, kind of out of a courtesy. I think we all recognize that, well, you're a teacher, we recognize the kids leave, and you kind of need a day to sort of get everything, tidied up and put together. On the last couple of calendars, our last day of school, like our last 2 days of school, so like this year, the Thursday and Friday, they're half days. So those half days count as full days, and the teachers are finishing their, doing their instruction in the morning, and then finishing their end of the year stuff in the afternoons. And we receive feedback from administrators and teachers saying these, putting half days at the end of a semester or half days at the end of the year, it is not really instructionally what they felt was best for kids. So, if President's Day was a priority, you could insert President's Day back in on draft A on the 20th of February, and you could remove the end of the year, the 26th workday. You could remove that, and you could make the 25th of May and the 26th of May 2 half days, and that would meet your 180 total days. Get President's Day in there, but again, not give the teachers that full day after everybody's gone to wrap things up. So that was a kind of a decision made on that feedback. And again, and I also want to share, Madam President, when looking at President's Day, we have about 5 districts that surround us. More than half don't, they actually have school on President's Day. So when kind of looking, it was kind of matching up with some districts around us that already have President's Day off. So that's kind of why, as a team, we said, okay, you know what, let's put that as a proposal. And again, the teachers, our little straw poll of the teachers in leadership, trenches, they all saw this, and A was their vote, because I don't know, the little bit, couple days on the winter break, the end of the year work day, I think that kind of maybe enticed them a little bit.
No, and I totally get it. I'm just curious. I don't want you, I'm not saying do this, but I'm just curious, what is the opinion of the teachers if you were to do and present this to them? I'm just curious.
Sure.
Okay. And then my last, actually, I guess it's a comment. So just so that we're agreed that there was a request made by Secretary Rodriguez that as soon as we know when graduation dates are, yes, please include that.
Okay.
And I guess I'm requesting, if that's okay with the rest of my colleagues, is to that survey for the teachers, just to see what is the outcome of that.
Yeah, Madam President, members of the Board, Superintendency, I can get some feedback on, we could really, if we need to, we can send a real quick survey to everybody saying, would you prefer 2 half days or President's Day? I mean, it's super simple to get some quick feedback and get some trends.
Okay. And then, this is my last question for reals, because I just forgot. So with the early outs, to support teacher collaboration, growth, and retention. So that means those days which are blocked in black, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Those are going to be for them to collaborate as teams, so no PD, no administrators involved, no instructional specialists. They are adults and can be given the opportunity to plan.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey. So I think in designing those days, we've been taking a lot of feedback from our partners that have already done it. So the number one thing they told us, we kind of said, what are the kind of the pitfalls, in this? Number one, they said, you have to make sure that there's a clear expectation for what occurs on Wednesdays. And so our goal is not to primarily always take those 2 hours and it become, the district hours, right? The 2 district hours. There's got to be, in consultation with our administrators, there's got to be and our partners that we've worked with that have done this in their 2 districts, to really say, all right, we have this, it's happening frequently, what does a cycle look like? Because the primary goal is teacher teaming and planning, right? It's really the campus level PLC, grade level PLC, some vertical alignment between campuses. But what the folks from Amphitheater shared with us is, hey, the power of taking some of that time and getting everybody on the same page on particular district things, there's value in that. But I want to make sure that we plan it out, but I want the board to know that our primary goal, and a couple of principals have given this feedback as well, the same feedback that you gave, is we need that time for teacher planning and teacher teaming on campus. So I think if we get a cycle in place, we can make that the priority and then work on other things that we need to. Mr. Duggan, did you have something to share?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, I wanted to share yesterday, as we were at student leadership, Secretary Rodriguez and I were able to drop in at Santa Teresa High School into a PLC where some teachers and led by an administrator were doing a wonderful job of breaking down the proficiency scales and really working collaboratively in a true PLC form to establish what proficiency looks like for each classroom and for even getting down to the detailed points of assignments. So I wanted to share that thing that we observed yesterday, that professional collaboration that we observed yesterday, is very difficult to find in a school, right? The time to do that, especially to the level that we observed. And so I personally, while I can't say every Wednesday is going to look like that, but I see the majority of Wednesdays being done in that manner, where it's professional collaboration together, planning together, breaking down proficiency scales, looking at student data as we roll out some more parts of Panorama and a new program with Power School that we have called Performance Matters, where they're able to really look at all of these different trends and really analyze them, so that we're not presenting to them as the district. The teachers are actually able to drive their own decision making through data.
Appreciated, because yes, I wasn't going to let my colleagues go, because we have to have expectations too. It's not just a free-for-all. And so yes, I expect there to be expectations, and I guess I would ask you, Superintendent Dempsey, and your administrative team, that please, I not to step on anybody's toes, but I keep hearing certain schools have wonderful PLCs. Okay, so I expect, or my request is, please support those schools that are not as strong with PLCs. Get them there, train them, maybe videotape these awesome PLCs so that we can get there. Share the wealth. Stop being hoarders, please.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, again, I think, Ms. Flores, you're not going to find a bit of argument with that. And as a school board making a decision to really see the value in early outs, it is really communicating to everybody in our community that what our kids learn is important. Our teachers need to plan, they need to prepare to deliver better for your kids, and also communicating to teachers that we expect you to use this time.
Yes.
I think it's a very clear statement. So let me conclude with our real quick next steps here. Madam President, any more questions? I'm sorry.
No,
I apologize.
Thank you, and to my teacher colleagues, yes, if we want to be held and be professionals, and also there's going to be expectations. And yes, I'm advocating for you and show your administrators that you are adults and professionals that you can do this, but of course with support. So thank you.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, so here's a quick rundown of our quick next steps. We'll take an opportunity here, we'll bring these back, we'll bring the tallies on the votes on these two calendars, Draft A and Draft B, back to you for action at the next board meeting. We will take some time when we return next week to just kind of get our calendar committee back together, open an opportunity for parents to kind of explain a little bit about what this calendar looks like. After we have a few more of those informational opportunities, we will send out our classic survey to all of our parties for them to vote with a little bit of attachment on clarification on what some of these things mean. We'll open that voting survey. We'll try to give it about usually about no more than 4 days with some reminders to push that out. We can really think with Ms. Murillo here an opportunity to get some additional type of information out to our families who may not respond electronically. We've just got to figure out how to do that so we don't get a bunch of duplicates. And we will include on a separate survey with, we'll include students, give students an opportunity to respond, on their preference as well. And that way we can kind of separate it out to see what they, what they, in their mind, what they prefer. I'm going to tell you, the kids, more breaks. They like long breaks all put together. So I think that's what we're going to give them. But we'll give them an opportunity as well. So thank you. Yes, ma'am.
So I lie constantly that I'm done. Sorry. I should never say that I'm done. So it was on my notes. So yes, if that is okay with my colleagues, to request that plenty of time be given to the community to fill out those surveys, and also make it to where we do. We announce this with plenty of time, social media remind, et cetera, et cetera.
Madam President, members of the Superintendent, we can do this. Here's an idea. Sorry, I'm just thinking out loud here. We can send. I'm going to write this down. We can send home a phone messenger, to all our parents, and that that's all grandmas, grandpas, aunts, and uncles, saying. The primary place to respond is on Remind, okay? But if you're having an issue responding on Remind, your secondary place will be the website. And if that is something that, you're having trouble accessing, please call the school, and we can try to get some kind of, paper survey, sent home with the child. I think that's a good way to do that, because then parents will get that phone call, and then they'll kind of have an option on really reaching out on what they need. And maybe that gets us a wider swath of responses.
Yes. Okay, and then my last comment is / question. So some parents might, and I'm going to say, like in my case, I don't like a Chromebook. It frustrates me. I don't like it. And so while maybe the answer would be everybody can access these surveys through their children's Chromebook, there are parents like myself who I don't want to mess with a Chromebook. I have my own device, my phone. But my question is, and I've always have asked this question, is if I don't have a Gmail, can I access the document? Because, even when I'm trying to join some of our meetings when I'm virtual or whatever, if I am not on a Gmail, I cannot access documents, I can't get into the meetings, which, so we've got to think about that, because, there might be parents that are separated or whatever the arrangements are. One parent might have the child with the Chromebook, and yes, they can use the Chromebook to access the meetings or surveys, but the other parent, the other guardian, might not have access because it's not their turn to be with their kid. So all they have is their device, and if they don't have a Gmail, can you access the stuff that we're pushing out.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey, so what I can share with you, the pre-survey that went out, that was open to anybody. It required them to put an email address, but didn't require them to have a Gmail account. Does that make sense? We collected email addresses just to try to prevent duplicates, so we can set that with no problem. Probably with the staff and the students, we will set their portion of the survey that might have a little separate survey, where they do need to be logged into their account, so we can kind of, track that a little bit better. But I don't believe, parents that are responding, they want to be able to respond one time. They don't want the time to go in there and respond 19 times, so we don't have to worry too much about duplicates. So we'll do that, and then I'll try to make sure we work with somebody who doesn't have a Gmail account or something to kind of test it.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to discussion item 10E, our Gadsden Policy JKD Membership or Review Hearing Authority. Superintendent Dempsey.
Madam President, board members, we have one particular policy that I'd like to bring to everyone's attention because it is currently policy. And this really is a portion of the policy regarding student discipline, and to the point of a student being offered a hearing. And one of the requirements that's in policy is to have in place a hearing committee. And what Mr. Snowdy has posted is the requirements for that review hearing authority. I'm sorry, I use the word committee, but it's called a review hearing authority. Shall consist of 3 persons appointed by the board at a meeting held in accordance with Open Meetings Act, which is our board meeting. Each appointee shall have experience as a supervisor or in a business or governmental agency, be familiar with the application of policy and procedures in the discipline procedure, be a resident of the district, and not a parent of a student in the school district. So, with that, that last sentence makes it a little tough, right? I have identified one individual in our community that would be willing to serve, and what I'm hoping to do is bring this back to the board as an action item next meeting to establish this hearing authority. We typically very rarely actually utilize this, but what happened through some review, part of the leadership team and their goal is to make sure that we take our current policy and our practices match it, and this quickly was flagged in that we don't have this in place. And so it's actually very rare that we utilize this group, but it actually is very important to have it in place in case we need to. So if you have some names of individuals who meet those pieces of criteria, will you please send those to me with contact information if you have it, and I will try to reach out. And again, I'd like to have that ready by next meeting. Okay.
Are there any questions, comments, or concerns? So my comment question would be, yes, definitely if each of us have persons that we can nominate, provide the information to you. However, I guess so that it's transparent, is it appropriate to advertise this for people who are interested, or no? I don't know. I think we could. The hard part is, one of the things I struggle with is I don't want to make a promise to, let's just say we advertised and we get 20 people willing. Well, I only named 3, and then that kind of maybe turns off a few individuals, and then they don't volunteer for other things, because it is very likely there'll be years they're never called. And so then, all of a sudden we'll need them, and we want to make sure they're in place. So we could do this a couple different ways. What we might do is try to establish something now and get it in place, and then we think about a future practice. Probably what I need to change or shift to is maybe every summer, maybe June or July is when I bring this to the board. We kind of reestablish the committee prior to each school year beginning, and then we have it in place, and maybe even have some alternates. Maybe we select
select 5 people, do some training with them, and then if we need the hearing authority, if a couple aren't available, we could have some alternates.
I do like the idea of alternates because these individuals might have a job that might, on the day that we need them, they might not be able to, or they have prior commitments. So I do like the idea of alternates. And then when I hear you saying they're going to serve years, I don't see a term, I guess if you will, a term limit. Should there be, are they going on a yearly basis, or I don't know.
I think that's a decision for the board. The thing I would guarantee we're going to need to do is kind of refresh this each year so that we make sure it's in place every year, because it's one of those situations where it doesn't matter till it really matters.
Yes.
And we want to make sure it's established. And I could, like I said, I think I could engage a little bit of training as we name those each summer, and then that gets them prepared for what they might experience and gets them ready, a little bit ready for what that might be. But these could be, these would be situations where students have gone through long-term suspension and possible expulsion, and parents are appealing those decisions. And so these are pretty serious very student-focused and related situations.
Okay, my next question would be, because I'm looking at the policy. So one of the requirements is be a resident of the district and not a parent, but it doesn't say, so I'm thinking, would an employee be eligible if they live in the district but are not a parent? Would that be a conflict of interest? Because according to the policy, we might have to revise it. I don't know.
Yeah, we might have to consider that. I would be cautious as a board member to serve on that, just because.
No, I'm not saying as a board member. I'm saying as an employee of the district, we have, I don't know, let's say Ms. Rosie Villalobos. If I was to nominate her, she fits all those criteria, but she is an employee, but because it doesn't say it doesn't negate.
Right.
Yeah.
I wonder, and maybe we can talk about each person's interpretation. I kind of interpret the purpose of that, and it's obvious, it's not stated, but the purpose seems to be
community,
a little bit of a separation, so that I hopefully don't know anybody particularly well if I'm hearing this. And so I hesitate. That's why I hesitate a little bit, because as employees we get really, we get to know kids and families, and that could be a little bit of a issue. Now, what it could be is we might utilize someone like that as an alternate, because if it's somebody that say worked for a long time at North Valley, but this is a student from the Chaparral area that they've never had any contact with and have known, that might be a possibility there. You see what I'm saying?
No, my personal opinion, folks, and please share my comments, is I would say probably it's best that it not be an employee, but it's not stated in the policy. So we might have to, make changes to the policy.
I agree completely. What I'd like to do is let's try to agree. Let's get 3 people established, and then let's talk about how we might want to change it. You always have the authority to change it. It just takes a little bit of time to add those pieces to our policy. The reality is where we are today, we don't have those 3 people in place, and we just want to get that fixed. And I appreciate our leadership team bringing this to my attention, because I quite frankly had missed it, and I appreciate their willingness to review things in light of policy versus practice.
Okay. And I guess my last comment would be to my colleagues is please try to look for somebody, and I would, if you're in agreement, like I'll find somebody in the Chaparral area, and then Danny, and so that there's 3 representatives, so another one to represent Danny's district and Ms. Rodriguez, and then of course.
Here's what I might suggest. If you'll just shoot me names of people interested, I'll reach out to them and see, and I'll try to get an idea of what area they're in, and we'll try to work through those pieces of it. I like that idea that says, let's try to use people from outside areas, to try to make sure that we're creating as fair a process as possible. If you'll just shoot me some names and ideas, and we'll try to mirror those. The idea of having alternates really kind of gives us a lot of room here to do some different things.
Okay. Any further questions, comments, or concerns? Yes, Mrs. Rodriguez.
I actually was thinking about that because if we have the same three people, though they're not always, you said that it's not something that's used quite frequently, but it almost makes it very clear who will be part of this. So definitely having those alternates perhaps would be a good idea, because even for not just the resident of the district, but even for the other two, because you could get someone, like you were saying earlier, if it's from Chaparral, maybe have, if the case is in Chaparral, perhaps have someone from the northern part go do the hearing. And so I really believe that instead of just having three people, we truly need to have more than just the three, and from all areas.
So that there's no biases, huh?
Correct.
Well, we're definitely, and Ms. Rodriguez, thank you so much for that input. I really, that thought process helps us, and I would, let's try to get in a list of 5 or 6 if we can, and committed, because the other side is we may know someone, and then I reach out to them, and they, I actually have one person who's already agreed. But I have another person in mind, but this individual's had a long career in neighboring districts, and I'm not sure that he's interested in getting engaged in anything of this nature again, but I'm going to try to twist his arm if possible.
Moving on to our last discussion item, 10F, the annual audit report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021. Superintendent Dempsey.
Madam President, board members, Ms. Martinez is going to help us with this item, as well as I think we might have Mr. Cordova, our auditor, online.
I'm sorry?
If you need to see the screen, we can move the podium.
Oh, no, that's fine. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. For this presentation, we have Mr. Bobby Cordova, who's our district auditor, and so he will be presenting, and I will stand here for any questions you may have.
Stop him soon, or he gets too far in.
Test.
Oh, there we go. Hot mic.
Okay, I've got it. I'm still here, correct? Go ahead, Mr. Cordova.
Okay. Again, I apologize for not being physically present. My father had a surgery today, and I am going to be sharing a presentation, hopefully about 10 minutes or so, and cover all the requirements that we are required to communicate with the Board of Education. So I'm going to pull that up right now. Okay, so tonight I realize that I'm probably one of the only things between you and being with your family and dinner. So again, I'm going to try and be concise. We met in November at the ESTA conference, and we discussed this presentation in detail. We met for a little over an hour, and so I'm just going to touch on the timeline. I'm going to touch on a few financial highlights for the members of the governing body. So the Board of Education, they should hear a couple of things, and there's some items that I want to point out within your financial statements that at least you need to be aware of, okay? There's some communication with the Board of Education that we fulfilled in November, and I'll just touch on those, and then we'll go over the opinions that we rendered on the financial statements. Okay, so if we start in the summer, we send a list of all the information we'll need. We begin our inquiries. We did have a conference July 16th, 2021 to discuss the planning scope, the timing of our audit. We did have Superintendent Dempsey present along with members of the audit committee. And then we performed field work kind of through a 3-month span. The regulatory due date for school districts in the state of New Mexico is November 15th. So working back on that timeline, we work in collaborative efforts with the finance team and HR and the program side. We do a single audit, which I'll touch on. Over the course of about 3 or 4 months, you can see here, we did go into the drafting of the financial statement phase in October, and ultimately on November 1st, we met with Madam President Salazar Flores, Mr. Castillo was present, and members of the audit committee, and we discussed the results of the audit. So the first thing that I want to just point out is that the financial statements are available for fiscal year 21, right here on the second to last bullet point, www.osanm.org. That's the New Mexico Office of the State Auditor. It's a 153-page document, lots of information in your financials, and we'd be here, we could be here a day or two to discuss every detail, but it's technically been released. So on January 19th, that's when the State Auditor's Office released the financial statements. There's also a federal reporting requirement because there's a federal audit performed due to the amount of federal boards that you administer. And that was submitted, and it was accepted by the Federal Audit Clearinghouse, which demonstrates the timeliness of the federal portion of compliance that Gadsden Independent School District has, and that was accepted on Valentine's Day on February. Okay, so the first memo I have for the public, for Madam President, members of the governing body, Superintendent Dempsey, that the audit was completed on time for both state and federal reporting purposes. Okay, so that's a good thing. So here's a financial look back. Here's a couple of things. I want to focus here on the middle. We did talk about this at the exit conference, and I just want you to be able to have heard this information. If you look at the expenses, you might look and say, we only have an $185 million budget. How are our expenses $300 million? And if you look the year before, fiscal year 20, there's this significant drop. And the reason for this is that it's in ERB, the pension plan in the state of New Mexico. And so about 7 years ago, there was an accounting standard implemented where if a school district or any government participates in a retirement plan and it's underfunded, there's a proportionate share of the liability that has to be presented on the participant's financial statement. So Albuquerque schools, Rio Rancho schools, Las Cruces schools, Gadsden, and all the way down, and higher education, whoever participates in ERB has a proportionate share of the state's unfunded obligation. So that's the primary reason you have this big, significant jump in expenses. So the liability did increase. That's presented in fiscal year 21. Revenue was down about $3.7 million. You did have some operating grants, the CARES Act, Educational Stabilization Funds, about $7.7 million that was increased, but your capital grants had decreased and SEG decreased year over year. So again, revenue was down just a little bit. And your net position, the reason the equity decreased was because expenses exceeded revenue due to the ERB net pension expense. Okay. Here's another slide. You can see cash and investments. That has been kind of significantly increasing your management costs. And with COVID, it's been kind of odd sure the last 2 fiscal years in terms of the cash position and managing fund balance. So $32 million is the cash and investments. That's if you took a snapshot right at June 30th. That represents an increase of about $10.8 million over fiscal year June 30th, 2020. And the main reason for that was some unspent bond proceeds in your bond building fund, and then the debt service fund, and then the operational fund. So you can see operational fund balance very healthy and strong there. It continued to increase. And then instruction, we always look at that function within the chart of accounts that New Mexico PED has outlined, and you spent roughly almost $97.5 million on the instruction function, and that's about a 5.7% increase in the prior year. So that's dollars in the classroom, direct within the school district. Okay, so just a few things again on the financial highlights. This slide summarizes we had several things that we talked about at the exit conference. The audit is conducted in accordance with GAS and GISD. That stands for Generally Accepted Auditing Standards and Generally Accepted Government Auditing Standards. And so what those standards require us as CPAs is to perform the audit to obtain reasonable assurance. So we don't audit every transaction. We don't audit every grant, every payroll. It's done on a test basis. The plan, scope, and timing, we went over that. Again, it was on time, and did that at our November 3rd meeting. We also were required to evaluate the accounting policies to determine whether they conform to GAAP, Generally Accepted Accounting Principles. That way, Gadsden Independent School District's financial statements can be analyzed and compared to any other school district in the United States of America. And we did communicate to the members at the exit conference that the accounting policies do conform to GAAP. Okay, there are estimates in their financials. The pension and OPEB, those pieces, again, you don't really have control over, because the way the state of New Mexico has implemented the accounting standard I talked about is that an actuarial study is done at the plan level, and all the estimates that go into that, how long people are going to live, the investment returns, when are people going to retire, all those go into that formula, and those are all disseminated down to the participants. The one you do have control over and you depreciate over time are your buildings, equipment, improvements, and we're required to evaluate whether those estimates are reasonable, and we concluded that they were reasonable. Okay, there were no significant difficulties or disagreements. In fact, it was quite the opposite. Superintendent Dempsey has always been collaborative to work with, and the finance team, the Dean of America, everyone involved in the audit process. It's tough to get this large project done, close your books, and get the audit finished. So back and forth, a lot of time involved and significant effort to ensure that it's on time. There were no misstatements detected, or no past audit differences. The significant exposures, if there are any, we do discuss those or disclose them in the financials. Sometimes it can be legal proceedings, major lawsuits, nothing like that. The only thing we did talk about was a little over $9 million of your deposits are uninsured and uncollateralized. You absolutely met the state statute of having 50%, but sure. Okay. Now the whole objective of our audit is to render an opinion about whether the financial statements are fairly stated. And the opinion that we rendered on the financial statements for FY21 is an unmodified or clean opinion. So that means that the financial statements are presented fairly. In other words, the numbers can be relied upon. Okay, again, it's not absolute assurance. We didn't test every single number or transaction. There's a materiality concept to it, but we did gather evidence, and the opinion is substantiated, and again, it's unmodified. If you went to the financial statements, it's pages 7 through 9 on our letterhead where we communicate this, and so it's used by bond, like Moody's, by LFC, PD, and any user of the financial statements, the general public. Okay. We also performed a single audit, and this has to do with your administration of federal funds. You did have a significant increase due to the CARES Act. The Educational Stabilization Fund. So we audited those dollars, and we also audited the lunch program, also significant for Gadsden Independent School District. So that accounted for about 46.4% of the total dollars spent during FY21. And we rendered an opinion on those two programs, and the opinion that we rendered was an unmodified opinion on each of the programs. So again, clean opinion, meaning that you did administer the dollars within the compliance requirements that are set forth by the federal government. And that was reported a couple weeks ago and accepted. Okay, we also have the obligation to report findings. We did have 3 findings this year. We discussed them in detail at the exit conference. None of them were material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in our professional opinion, but there were 3 findings. We spelled them out in the report. They're on pages 151 and 152. There were no full audit findings, and that's significant because the federal government, if there's findings in that area, that'll get on the radar of Department of Ed at the federal level, and corrective action plans put in place or on-site visits, that type of thing. There were 2 prior year findings, and we followed up on both of them. One was repeated and one was resolved. Okay, so these were the findings. Again, we talked about them: inventory, student count sheets, and budgetary expenditures. I wasn't going to talk about the details since they were discussed and responded to. The finding from the prior year that was resolved had to do with deficiencies in areas of improvement in the information technology, general computer control area. And so we felt that there was enough progress done and resolved the finding from FY20. So the audit's not just about findings and fraud. It's we're here to help try to navigate through all the challenges that come with children and having adults collaborate to do that. And so finance is a significant component of that. So here's just a few things that we talk about with the dean during the audit process and her team, Superintendent Dempsey as well, documentation and review. So this was an example where, we didn't think it was a finding, but we communicated it that, there's supposed to be a review and it wasn't documented. So we just got to be careful that the internal controls that you set forth are actually implemented in their work group, and that us as auditors or anyone can come in and check and verify you're actually doing this. Invest in the cybersecurity area. You have firsthand experience of ransomware attacks, so I think it's just important, and it's on almost a weekly basis where we hear something either locally within our state or nationally where that the risk of cybersecurity attacks happening is increasing every day. We also noticed some idea via matters. Again, not a finding, but there have been some things that PED has noted a few, and so we want to try and get those resolved. But again, overall, the audit, there are things that we can help with, bring to the table to continue to enhance the internal controls or the efficiency of how things work. We try to do that. Overall, in conclusion, one-time audits and clean opinions, both on the financial statements and the single audit portion. So, we appreciate the hard work. Thank you, Dean and Erica. I'm not there physically, but I'll stand for any questions, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dempsey at this time.
Any questions, comments, or concerns?
Madam President, board members, thank you, Mr. Cordova. We really appreciate this, your presentation. What I might add for the board, first I want to thank Ms. Martinez, Ms. Villarreal, Yolanda. The amount of work that finance department does is overwhelming sometimes, and from the outside they make it look very easy. And I appreciate the dedication and commitment, Ms. Martinez, that you and your team show us. And a note here, it mentioned 2 major programs that were audited this year, and those have to do with federal programs and student nutrition. So Ms. Villalobos and Ms. Guerra. And again, I appreciate their commitment to holding to those financial standards, and it's a tremendous amount of work to get these kind of audits in this size of a district, and it's very impressive. And maybe for the board to also understand that sometimes when we think of an audit, we only think of finance. But if you'll notice, technology was involved in this, special education, student nutrition, and federal programs, along with all the other components. So, and HR is another component of an audit. And so just keep in mind there's a wide, when they do an audit, there's a wide swipe or they try to take a look at and determine, how we're doing. And I appreciate everybody's work, and we'll continue to work hard to make sure we stretch those taxpayer dollars as far as we can.
Mr. Cordova, I did have one question. Is he still there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Can you elaborate a little bit on, it's the slide previous, it's the one before your last slide, on where they're not necessarily findings, but they're recommendations. I didn't quite get what the recommendation was under Idea B compliance.
He didn't list it.
Sure. I'm pulling back up this, making sure I have the right. So what it had to do with is, we review programs even that we don't perform the single audit, and there were a couple of repeat compliance matters that PED had noted, and so I think it wasn't, we felt our professional judgment didn't go in the auditor's report, but in terms of the details of what they were, it was, there's programmatic things that, hey, you need to work on this or this, and it had been a year or two, I believe, where the matters were repeated, and that was done by PEDs on site, So, again, it wasn't necessarily encompassed in our audit in terms of, hey, that should go in here, but it's just an area like, hey, this has been a couple of years now, so let's point this out and get it out there on the table, see if we can make sure we get this resolved.
So, I heard you clearly, but I don't think are you allowed to say what it was? Because I don't think you communicated that.
Yeah, I'm allowed to, I'd have to go back to the actual detailed document. That was an example at the exit conference. I think we would need about the details of what that was. But in terms of, it was an on-site visit, and, I could definitely email you or send, what the detail was in terms of, what the compliance matters were. So it's in a, I think, the summarizes and sends based on their field audit.
Okay, so I guess I would ask my colleagues, is it okay to get that information later?
Madam President, board members, absolutely we'll get that to you. Obviously this is an opportunity. This is, we have an opportunity now to share our audit publicly, and so I'll confirm what those compliance pieces are, but I believe they have to do with a corrective action plan that was put in place regarding child find and some timelines that were not met. And so, but I'll confirm that.
I believe certain superintendents, it was timeline.
Yep.
On IEPs or something around that, on that.
Yeah, there were some timeline pieces, but I'll confirm that and I'll make sure the board is aware.
Okay, and then this report, I don't think it was accessible to, well, we saw it right now this evening. Will that be accessible to the public? And then should the public have any further questions, who do they contact?
Absolutely. The report at this point, Mr. Cordova, correct me if I'm wrong, but our report at this point is available to the public. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, it's on the website, and the presentation that we sent over, I believe we sent it. If not, I think we did send. That was the long version. I mean, it's probably 40, 50 slides at the exit conference. That you were there and you had them. But in terms of this condensed presentation in the public meeting, yeah, we don't mind sharing it. We can send it to Superintendent Dempsey or Ms. Martinez.
Absolutely. And then for questions, they would be for myself or Ms. Martinez.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Cordova.
Sure. You're welcome, Madam President.
Have a good evening. Okay. And then finally, moving on to our last item. Do I hear a motion?
Madam President, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Cano has made a motion to adjourn. Superintendent Dempsey?
So recommend.
Okay. Ms. Delgado, can you please take roll call? Correct? Do we need a roll call for this one or no?
Madam President, you do not
Because
to
we don't have
adjourn.
closed session.
Only for closed session.
That's correct. Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. We are now adjourned. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.